fire. They were ambushed on a patrol, and this one fellow was wounded, and he was taken by the Chinese. I don't know what happened, but you could hear him screaming nearly all the way across the valley. So he never came home, his body's never been found. I got wounded as we hit the enemy line, inside the circle of our trenches. I got hit with a machine gun in the back of the leg, my right leg, and knocked down. I couldn't move my leg. It's, you're going, to 20 or 30 degrees below there at times. It is cold. A lot of us saw our first snow there. I'd never seen snow before. In that, the company, the platoon that went away, they did that, there was 30 odd, and they were all young fellas. At the day, I suppose, there's 20 of them, 15 of them alive. Where are all the young men gone? I'm not a young man anymore.
Okay, Jim, we were talking before about life overview. Just start by telling us where you were born and grew up.
Well, I was born in a little town called Barraville, B-A-W-R-A-V-I-L-L-E. That's on the Nambucca River in New South Wales. 1951 I joined the army, June of 1951. And we trained at Ingleburn and then at Kapuka. Then back to, I was transferred from there back to Big Ingleburn to the 1st Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment. And we formed up the battalion then and left to go to Korea on the 3rd of March 1952 on the troopship Devonshire. We went to Kure in Japan, had about 3 weeks there, and then by ship to Pistown in Korea. We travelled from Korea to, we went up to the verge of the front, and we were stationed on the Kansas line. The Kansas line was a secondary line, not the front line, but we were there preparing defence positions should the Chinese force another attack, a secondary line right through across Korea. And we worked on that until we went into the front line. We went up to in front of 227355, which was Little Gibraltar, where we got our first taste of being shelled there. From there we various places around Korea. We took over from the Leicesters, we took over from Cosby's, took over from 3RA. You'd change, you kept changing every time you changed. Well, somebody else went out the line, you went in. And this is the way it went. On the 12th of July, we were in, I forget the name of the hill we were on, but we were next door to 3 Battalion, RAR. And they had an attack, or put an attack on the Chinese, and the Chinese were shelling everybody, and I was on a listening post, and had to go on the air every hour and half past. Anyway, we were lying flat on the ground because we were being shelled. And I sat up with my head resting on my elbow, and shell went off behind me, and I got the shell in the back, a splinter in the back of the arm, which would have been in my head had I been lying down, so I would have been lucky I was on the air. Anyway, that was all right. I went back to the regimental aid post, and then by the Indian Field Ambulance to a Norwegian MASH, where they operated on me, and I went from there back to Seoul to a British hospital, and I remained there for about a week. Then they flew us to Kure in Japan, where my arm was again operated on, and I remained there and came back to Korea a month later. That was about August, so mid-August or something. And we remained in Korea, changing lines again a couple of times until early December, when we were told we were to take part in a penetration raid on the Chinese line. So we formed up and set off. It was the 11th of December, very cold month, and plenty of ice and snow about. So we were travelling down a ridge on the way out, and you couldn't walk. The ground was solid ice virtually, and everyone just sat on their bums and slid down the hill until we got to the bottom, and then we could walk again. There was a very smooth track all down that hill. I remember we going down, and bloody hand grenade come rolling down. Somebody had fallen off somebody's belt. The pin was luckily in them. It was rolling past. I don't know how many felt it going, but it went. Didn't go off. Anyway, we went across the valley. Then we went through a valley between two lots of Chinese lines. Then we came up onto one ridge, and we came down from the rear of the outpost or Chinese front line position. And just before we got there, of course, they found out we were there, and they started machine gunning us from behind towards their own positions. And I just arrived onto the hill, and I got hit in the back of the leg with a machine gun bullet, which knocked me down a bit, of course, and took all the feeling out of my leg. And I was lying there for a while, and someone came over, and he said, "You all right, mate?" I said, "No, I can't move my leg. Well, I'll get some help." Now, this is the part, he walked over then to the, I said, "Well, there's someone there," and he walked over to them, and they were Chinese, and as he got there, they bayoneted him, and he fell into the trench with them. At the same time, there's reinforcements are coming down a wide trench, reinforcement trench that they have towards the position. Well, one lot went past, and there's another lot coming, and there's no place or time for me, so I just dived over that trench down over the side of the hill. But it wasn't the way our own blokes went. So we're going down over the hill, and I got caught up in another lot of machine gun, which didn't hit me. Stayed there for a little while, and then down onto the flat of the valley, and going along, more or less crawling all this time. And then I got caught up in a mortar or artillery barrage, and they're coming up and they're counting the pattern the way you somehow do, and well, shit, next one's mine. So anyway, I sat up waiting for it to hit me, and as it went off, I knew it wasn't going to miss me. So I just dropped flat on the ground, and a piece of shrapnel caught me right across the top of the shoulder. Didn't do any damage, just tore the skin out of it all. So I got out of that, and there was no place, so I got over into the gully then, and I hear a Chinese patrol coming up. Then they were on across the other side, only about 30 feet, 30 yards wide, the valley, and I hear them coming up. I stood up through some little bushes on the top of the edge of the gully. I saw them, and the one fella coming straight towards us. This is bloody lovely. So I'm waiting for him. I crouched down under the bank, and he walked up, and there's a log about 10 feet away from me across and he walked straight across that log and up the next ridge. He was going up in a different position. He didn't look around. Lucky for him and for me. Anyway, that was all right. So I got down a bit further then, and I hid in a little gully there all day. And that night I left again and decided to get home. I knew where we were. So I went out on the valley floor in the middle of the valley where no one had bloody ambushed me, I hoped. Coming down through they're all paddy fields, and they're all embankments across the gully to hold the water to a certain level. And they're all covered with snow. And I'm coming down there, and I get over one bund, and then in front of me, on the next one, you can see about 8 fellas lined up, lying on the bund facing towards our position. I had to get past them, so I went around the edge, up around the bit of a ridge, and then went down a couple hundred yards, and then back onto the valley floor and straight home again. After I got back onto the floor, we were going along and I come to a creek, which was frozen over. Anyway, I started, a wide patch should be pretty solid, so I started crawling across, and the ice broke and dropped me in the creek. I get in the creek. Anyway, I had to rake the ice to get out of that, and kept going. Then I got in towards our own line, well, within position where I thought I could yell out and make them hear, but I yelled and no one heard. We had an outpost out there. I knew we'd have position where it was manned by Australian troops. And to this day, I don't know whether I was calling out or not. Anyway, I thought, oh, well, I've got to fire the Owen gun off. They know the difference between the guns. So I went to fire the Owen and it was frozen. They'd been in the ice and it was frozen up, so it wouldn't fire. So the only way to go from here is to crawl back to our own position. I'll be allowed from there. So I start off, and then I hear one of our patrols coming in. So eventually I attracted their attention by calling out. And I called out in Japanese, "Chutamade," which virtually means wait a minute. And of course I hear their rifles cock, and that, they weren't expecting that. So I said, "What's your name?" I said, "Jim Young." And I was B company, I was out on the patrol last night. He said, "Who's your platoon commander?" And you wouldn't want to know, you get a blackout. We'd had our platoon commander had been killed and we'd got a new platoon commander. And I couldn't think of his name. I said, "I can't remember." Oh no, first he said, "What's the password?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "Last night it was whatever it was." He said, "Who's your platoon commander?" I don't know. I said, "Major Man's me company commander and Sergeant McNulty's me sergeant." He said, "Just a minute." So they get on the phone then, he said, "Do you know where you are?" I said, "Yeah, I'm down over this hill, and if you would come and get me, I wouldn't be." The language I used, of course, they realised it wasn't the Chinese. Anyway, he said, "You're in the middle of a minefield. Get out and we'll help you." How do I get out? He said, follow your steps back the way you came in." I said, "Not bloody walking or crawling." I said, "I don't know where I came in. We'll go to the right." So I went to the right. After a while, he said, "Where are you?" Over here. He said, "You're gone the wrong way." He said, "Go to the right." I went to my right. He was looking at me. His right was that way. So I got out of it anyway. Then they carried me in. Or helped, we got in. And they had to cut me clothing off at this time. They had to cut me coat, my trousers and my boots off. They were all frozen. That was all right. And then I went from there back to, again with the 60th Indian ambulance, back to American MASH Hospital. I don't think it was 301, it had one on the TV, it's not that one. Anyway, I was operated on there, evacuated back to a British hospital near Seoul, and that was 13th of December. And I remained there. I went the first one I went into, they put me to a clearing hospital, British clearing hospital. I got down there and they put me in the ward, and I was massive high, an allergy rash all over me. The bloke said, he dosed me up with the orderly, dosed me up with some lotion on the rash, and he put me in a bed. The next day, a British brigadier came around inspecting the hospital. He said, "What are you doing here, Digger?" I said, "I was wounded." He said, "What are you doing in this hospital, in this ward?" I said, "I don't know, it's where they put me." I find out later that I was in the VD ward. But it was only put there because it was nearest where the orderly was. He could see me overnight with this rash, with an allergy rash. So anyway, he got a bit of a scolding and I was sent back to the wounded ward. I went from there down to Seoul to a hospital and remained there over Christmas. And got back to my unit again about the 20th of January. And after I got back, got my rifle back from someone where it had been. When we went out on that patrol, they took my rifle off and gave it to someone else and gave me an Owen gun. It was, I don't know why, I could use an Owen gun better than a lot of them, I think. Anyway, whoever had my rifle had just handed it in. Hadn't been cleaned. So it's a real mess of the barrels rusted and God knows what. So I tried to clean it and couldn't do it. So the lieutenant said, "Oh, you're on defaulters parade." The defaulters rate, of course, you have to go down in the afternoon and do a bit of compulsory drill after work. But we weren't in the line that time. They were at Rackler rest area. You can have defaulters when you're not in the front line. Anyway, I get down there and decided we double march. And I just stood there. And he went, why aren't you marching, young? And I said, my legs sore, I'm not prepared to do it. And he will go and tell the lieutenant. So I went and saw him, and I got excused from defaulters. And shortly after that, I got transferred from the rifle company back to the battalion headquarters for a while in the intelligence section, and then became the company clerk. And I remained in that unit until the battalion went back to Korea in 1954, when I transferred to Army Service Corps as a clerk, and I was posted to a couple of units in Northern Command, and then to apprentices school at Balcombe in Victoria. Remained there as a sergeant until I retired. I left the army in 1957, the end of June. Yeah, after I got out of the army, I got out of the army and I joined the police force in Queensland. And then 26 and a half years in the police force in Queensland. Then I left that, well, about 26 years of that was as a detective, actually. We were plain clothes. And 6 months in uniform, I'd actually only 6 weeks in uniform. And then I went on temporary plain clothes for a couple of years, and then on plain clothes and finished up detective sergeant. Resigned at 55 years, retired at 55 years of age. And that's it. Since then I haven't done much except retired. Did a bit of travelling. Lost my wife about 12 years ago. We'd been married 40 years by then. I have 2 children, 5 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren. Enjoyed life. But when I joined the army in 1951, I had been working on the Dorrigo railway line and living at home at the time. And during the period, I got cranky because my boot heel came off, and they told me that the railway was supplying rubber boots for workers. So I applied for rubber boots, and they said, no, you supply your own boots. So I more or less told them that I didn't really want their job, but they know what they could do with it. And then I had nothing to do. And this stage, the Korean War was on. And well, there's a chance for that, so I went and joined the army.
So you said you joined up the army, and the career was on.
The Korean War had started about 1950, and this was 51. They were calling for volunteers to go to Korea, particularly for ex-servicemen. They joined K-Force, which is a 2-year enlistment. So when they were looking for volunteers for 2-year enlistments, I went, oh, well, fair enough, 2 years. So I went there to join up for 2 years. That's good. But I had no previous experience. They said, sorry, you can either join for 6 years or you can't join for 2 years. Well, what's the odds? I joined for 6 years. And I joined the army, and so it went on. But if they could have joined for 2 years, I would have done. I had no aspirations at that stage of being a full-time soldier or anything. Just a matter of a job, something to do.
How do you feel about the possibility of having to go to a war?
Didn't worry me. Didn't worry me. I knew when I joined the army I'd probably be going to war. So that didn't worry me at all.
So tell us about when you first joined up. Where did you go? What happened?
When I joined the army, we were sent to Ingleburn near Sydney for training, army training to become a soldier. Right? Everyone, no matter what corps you go into, be it a driver or a postman or a baker or whatever, you do your initial training. Your military training comes first. You do that for a period of about 3 months. And at that stage, you know a soldier's training. And then comes your specified training. Now, I went from there to infantry. From Ingleburn, we went to Kapooka to finish our training. And when we finished at Kapooka, then we were allocated to our corps or whatever. Choice of the army they decided you were fitted for. So I wanted to be infantry, and I could have been engineers, they said, but I wanted to go to infantry, so they sent me to an infantry battalion. The other fellows that wanted to, one was a school teacher, he went to the education department, corps. Another fellow went to a baker, a chef, I'm sorry, he went to the catering corps. There was engineers, there was drivers, RWC and so on. Whatever corps you were allocated to, you went to that unit, and then you were trained again. And I went back to Ingleburn, where we were trained to be infantry. We were taken on marches, did mock attacks, all that kind of thing. We were taught to be infanteers, and that took us about another 3 or 4 months. By Christmas, we were trained enough to be allocated to duty overseas. We went on leave at Christmas time, and we came back off leave the beginning of January 1952, and then we were posted. They started arranging each section, platoon and company and so on. And at the end of February, we sailed on the 3rd of March as a full battalion, complete. In that interim between Christmas leave and the end of the 23rd of February, actually, I got married. I went home and got married, and I went home on Christmas leave and I met my wife, and we got married on the 23rd of February. Married 10 days and I went overseas. Went to Korea. We went from there to Kure in Japan.
Just before we get there, I might ask you a couple of questions about, well, first up, the initial training that everyone did.
Yeah.
What kind of training would you do for this?
Marching, care for rifles, care for bread guns, bayonet training, all general aspects. You learn to march in various ways, fast, quick march, double march, slow march, formation and mole marching, rifles, slope arms, order arms, present arms, all that kind of thing. Fixed bayonets, unfixed bayonets, everything to do with the soldier, rifle. We were taught the basics of Owen gun and Bren gun, which they don't have now. We were taught the basic of cleaning and maintaining them and loading them and unloading them. You had to be able to, that more or less came later, I suppose, in the infantry training. You had to be able to load a magazine at night in the dark with the right number of bullets in the right order, the right sequence, by feel. You had to be able to strip a rifle in the dark and replace it, not lose any parts. Sometimes difficult. But no, the basic training there was basic training. It was getting you fit to be a soldier. And, you've got a little bit of rules and regulations. You were taught to obey orders, you were taught to obey them instantly. You don't argue, you didn't argue with anybody, you weren't going to. So, this is it basically instilling in you the instinct to be a soldier, which is an instinct, regardless of what they say. You're going to be a soldier, you've got to be one properly or not at all. and then that was your initial training. And then after you finish that, then you come back and you learn these magazines and rifles, stripping and all that kind of thing at that stage, and also how to attack they take you out on an exercise now. The enemy are there. You've got to attack them. You deploy this, you and there, and so on. And you learn how to attack a position and what to do, how to take a prisoner and how not to. get taken yourself.
How do you take a prisoner?
Hmm?
How did they train you to take a prisoner?
They put bloody blokes in position, you've got to go up and catch him without being caught yourself. You get 3 or 4 fellas coming up attacking from one side and someone sneaks around the back and grabs you from behind, if it's possible. It didn't work with us in Korea, I'm afraid. We had a parade there that we were about to get a prisoner on. And we killed a lot of the Chinese, but we didn't get a prisoner. They got 2.
So, you did your specialist training?
Infantry, yes.
Infantry, yeah. What kind of tactics were they teaching you when you were fighting?
Oh, well, attacking enemy positions, route marching, putting up with bloody hardship, all that kind of thing, you know. You had to, they'd set up a position, or not a position, even if it's only on paper. This is the tactics. You learn war tactics as much as anything else. And you learn, you've got to learn a little bit of map reading too, so you can know, if you look at a map, where there's steep country, where there's gradual country, you know. It's all marked on maps. So you learn a little bit of that. You learn how to dig trenches, how to fortify positions, how to camouflage. Everything. General army, you learn what the army is about, you know.
And how was the training, geography, that you were learning on, say, in comparison to ending up in Korea?
The territory we were training on was nothing like Korea. There's nothing around Sydney that could compare with the hills of bloody Korea. They are, you know, well, I suppose you get out the Blue Mountains, maybe you would, but we didn't train in that area. No, there's nothing there. You got, well, the Hill 355, or Little Gibraltar, was a hill that was 1,000 metres high, 1,000 feet high, and it just come up between 2 valleys. And then there's a ridge down along that was Peter, what's in the 4 disciples, Peter, Paul, John and Luke, Mark, Luke, John and Peter or somebody, I think. Each of the hills were named after them. And they were down a ridge. They divided 2 valleys. And they are pretty steep, you know. They're brush covered, there's no great timber on them. There's no real big timber in that country at all, where we were anyway. Nothing like the Australian bush here. It's timbered, it's covered with what you might call regrowth, I suppose. It's trees up to about 20, 30 feet high maybe. But a lot of it's only like azalea bushes. It looks like azalea bushes when they're in flower too. Beautiful country.
How prepared did you feel at the end of the training?
Fit. Very fit. We were all fit then, yeah. Where are all the young men gone?
Good. So tell us about leaving for Japan. Well, you went to Japan first, but leaving for war.
Oh well, we were embarked on a trucks at Eagleburn and driven into town on the 3rd of March, and we marched through Sydney streets from I think around Central down to the harbour. And we, of course, saluted the town hall. The town hall saluted us, I don't know which. And we went down to, we embarked on the Devonshire, which was a troop ship. And we went out through Sydney Head at about dark on the night of the 3rd of June, and the 3rd of March. And that's the first time I'd ever been on a boat in the bloody, even though I'd been on a ferry before that. I had actually. But we got out there and luckily we had hammocks to sleep on. Because when the boat got out there, she goes through the head, she's rocking about a bit. And well, I was one of many, but it felt a bit squeezy, you know. But when we got in the hammock, you close your eyes, you don't even know because you're lying still. The boat's moving, but the hammock's not. So that was all right. Yeah, so that was our first night. We went through then, we went called in at one of the islands up there, New Britain, for water or something there. There was a pretty good storm going just before we got there. Anyway, we missed that most of it. And straight from there, straight through to Kure.
And what was your knowledge of the situation in Korea?
I know that the troops had been pushed up to the bloody. They went up as far. They pushed the Koreans back to the border, Yalu River, up on the border of China, and then they got pushed back down to the Busan border perimeter, which is the full length of Korea. And by then they got pushed back halfway, and they were on about the 38th parallel, about halfway through Korea. We knew that there was hard fighting, there was a lot of fighting, and it was still going on. And well, we knew all that. We knew we were going to be there soon. It didn't worry us.
And what about your knowledge of the reasons for the war and communism?
Well, it was a communist takeover of South Korea, and I suppose we'd all been taught about the dreadful Red Peril, all that kind of thing. But we were there actually, I suppose, to stop the takeover of South Korea. And we knew we were going to do that. We had to do that. Yeah, you can't. At that stage, communism was overtaking vast parts of the world, you know, and we certainly didn't want to hear. So we knew that.
So tell us about arriving in Kure. What were you seeing?
When we came into Kure, we pulled into a harbour, and the waterside workers there were mostly women, which we'd never ever seen before. We'd never seen many waterside workers for that matter anyway, but there nearly all the waterside workers were women. And we pulled in and we were just on board for, I think we stayed one day on the ship and went off the next day in the trucks. And went out to, I think, Hiro, I think it was. I'm not sure on that. It was between Kure and Hiroshima, right about halfway between. And we settled into a camp there, which I think at one stage would have been a Japanese training camp, because there was next to it a large Japanese police training establishment. But the police were trained in army uniforms. They were in actual fact an army, but Japan couldn't have an army, so they called them police. And I think that the barracks we took over, or the section we took over, we had to put our tents on. We didn't have barracks. Would have been part of that establishment at some stage or other. Well, there we were, and we didn't do a lot of training there. We did a few marches, tackled a couple of hills, and spent half our time on leave, I think. Went into Hiroshima, saw the atomic ruins there. That wasn't that long after the war, of course. And there were, most of the town was still in ruins. People were living in amongst it. There were shops in amongst the area that had been bombed. So the atomic residue was not then affecting lives that much. The atomic energy residue, you know, it wasn't then like we believed it. They said an atomic bomb drop's not going to live on it for 20 or 30 or 40 years. That didn't happen. They were living back on it within 5 or 6 years. And there were little shops there, there were beer halls, there were freewheel taxis, drove on both sides of the road, didn't care where. God, how funny. You get in the taxi, there's three of you in the back and a fella up the front. And he coming down here, there's a gang, there's a bit of a straight out the other side of the road, then back this side of the road. I don't know how they ever got through without accidents. Never seen driving like it. There was no side of the road to keep on, no nothing.
What did you think of the site that you saw in Hiroshima?
No, nothing. Really, it was just another thing we knew would be and expected to see, did see. Nothing else, hardly. And I suppose, you see, we went later to Tokyo, and there's no difference. You know, you expect to see what you see, really. By this time, you know enough about the country to know approximately what it's like. You know what the people are like. You know what their houses are mostly like. There's no high-rise buildings anywhere, in that stage anyway, in Kure, Hiroshima. Tokyo had a few, but they were only about 6 stories mid the highest then in Tokyo even. There was certainly nothing in Seoul or Busan. They were both shelled out of existence nearly. There was nothing really to see. A lot of desolation, a lot of destruction. You're travelling up by train. You see where the war's been, there's a tank in the ditch here, there's something else over there, and ruins of vehicles, and, you know. And you get used to it, you don't expect anymore. The trains are a bit rough. They have no toilet in them. They've got a hole in the floor. And there's 2 slabs, 2 pieces of wood like that each side, slanting down. And there you go, and you squat over the hole, you squat over and use it. Go straight through on the railway line. There's no flushing, and that's it.
What did you think of this at the time?
we were amused by it. Very, very much amused. Something, you know. Also, when you're on the train, you go along, the toilets face, all open toilets facing the railway station. And they got little half doors like this. And when you're in the train sitting down, you can see underneath the door, you can see the person's body from here down underneath the door. That was remarkable too. Excuse me for that.
Yeah, sure. Have another drink of your water.
Yeah, they were remarkable trips. We'd never seen trains like that before, you know. Never will again, probably.
What was the rest of the trains like?
Pretty rough. No upholstery, no nothing on them, you know.
Well, just basically, we may have gone over this a little bit, but you were 3 weeks in a camp at Hero.
Yeah.
And what exactly were you doing in that camp?
Well, waiting to go to Korea. I don't know why we were waiting there. That's for the Army's business, I suppose, but we were camped down there for about 3 weeks. We did a bit of, not much training, we were route marching, but mostly just around the camp. Got plenty of leave there. And maybe they had to wait for a ship, I don't know. But anyway, the ship came, and it was one of the American Liberty boats, which are very, very cramped conditions. You're sleeping in hammocks about 18 inches deep, and beds amongst about 18 inches deep, about 18 inches wide, and about 5 stories high. And that's the way you lived. You were just so cramped in you couldn't walk sideways down between the 2 rows of bunkers as they were. They were very, very cramped. But we got there. We left Japan in the afternoon when we were in Busan. In the morning it was an overnight trip. In Busan, yeah, it was an overnight trip. And
How many troops were on that ship?
1,000, I suppose. A full battalion anyway. Whether there were 2 ships or not, I think it was only 1 ship. And there would have been 1,000 troops, or near enough to 1,000. And when we got to Busan, we were taken straight to the railway yard and loaded on a train that went north. We had no time at all in Busan.
What were your impressions of what you did see of Busan?
Well, Japan, Korea.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
Busan.
It was when I arrived there was April. That was a spring. It was nice country then, but there was no people much. You know, it was mostly vacant land because it'd been fought over 2 or 3 times. There was no one much living there. Houses were all destroyed and gone, most of them anyway.
What about when you first arrived in the ship? What was, I guess, the first things that struck you about Busan? Any smells?
It was badly damaged town, damaged by war, which is obvious. And it was untidy, which is natural anyway for a place under the conditions they were living in, you know. Children were hungry. They gathered round the railway station, the train when we were getting on it, wanting food and whatever we could give them. Some got it, some didn't, I suppose.
What kind of food did you have to give them?
Not much. Chocolates or, there's not much food really. We had, maybe some of us had some, but most of us for our own. The army fed us, they didn't give you food to carry about. There wasn't much food. Lollies, a few lollies and these, cigarettes. Kids like cigarettes. They changed them for something else, I suppose.
Was there anything about, I guess, the smells or anything that hit you, struck you when you...
No, not really. I don't think there was that much smell. Not that I can recall anyway.
And so they put you on a train.
Yeah, and it took us up north towards the 38th parallel.
Could you see anything out of the train windows?
Yeah,
or?
we could see the country we were going through, which was, as I said, desolate farmland mainly. Very few buildings, very few houses. I don't remember any towns actually. There must have been towns there somewhere. But I don't know. We saw hills in the distance. It's not much different to any other train trip, I suppose, except the country was different. The rice fields are not like our farms, that type of thing.
How are they different?
Well, dairy farms are very wide open areas. Paddy fields are little paddy fields bounded by paddy buttons, and they're much smaller. I've seen rice growing in Australia, but our buds out here were acres compared to theirs are only half an acre, very tiny areas that they farmed and could hold water to level it. Your buds, the banks, your levee banks on buds, they control the height of your water. And it's all got to be virtually the same height. And then if it goes down, then it drops down 2 feet, and then they do another one the same height. And this is the way they fund, which is not like our farming at all.
And how long did this train trip take?
I think only a day. I can't remember. I can't remember sleeping on the train, so we must have been there where we were going at daylight dark.
And what was the general feeling amongst the troops during this train trip?
I don't know whether there's any general feeling. We were going, that was it, I don't think there was any feeling of neglect or any feeling of remorse or any feeling of elation. I don't think there was anything, not that way. We were just going up there, do the job, have a day.
And so tell me about what you saw when you got off the train.
Well, we got off the train and we were marshalled into an area where we camped. And the next day we went up to, the Kansas, our position on the Kansas line, where we had which the Kansas line is a reserve defence line in case the war escalated, and we were pushed back from our then current positions, which were north of the 38th parallel, back to the Kansas line, which was, I think, just south of the 38th parallel, near the Gloucester Valley, where the 3rd Battalion, the Gloucester Regiment, were badly mauled about in 1950. Where we were camped on the Kansas line looked straight down the Gloucester Valley towards the Imjin River. We couldn't see the Imjin River, but in that general direction north.
And what did you do when you got there?
Well, we had to firstly we started digging positions. We had to dig trenches, hutchies, which we call the hutchies, were bunkers where you could live.
Can you just describe for me, it might seem a bit strange, but in detail how you dig these, how they're...
Dug out. Yeah. All right, now, well, you stepped out made this area, say 10 feet square, about 8 to 10 feet square. And then you dug a hole, 8 to 10 feet square and about 8 feet deep. All the soil was thrown up over the top, around the hole. You also dug a trench, which which led into the hole from one area, and that became the entrance eventually to the dugout. Once you start at say 10 feet wide, you come down about 2 feet, and then you drop the hole into about 8 feet square, and that 4 feet, 2 feet on each end became the base of your roof. Your roof sat on the 2 feet at each end, the poles for your roof. Once you got your hole dug, then you put logs across as much as you can. Cover the roof as closely together with logs as you can. And on top of that, you use the soil that you dug out of the hole to fill sandbags, and you put them on top of the logs to hold the logs in position and to stop anything else coming through.
Where did the logs come from?
Yeah, well, now that's a funny story. Mostly the logs were cut in the bush around if we could find any. We couldn't find much. But we found a stray American. And this fella came up there half full of beer one morning, and he had he had a load of logs on his truck. So he wanted a few meals, so we gave him a meal, and we looked at these logs. It wouldn't be bad, would they, see? So we asked him about what he wanted to do with his logs. He told us he was AWL, he was many miles from his own unit. No, he said, you want them? He said, yeah. He said, I'll give it here for a slouch hat. So he got my slouch hat, and we got the logs. And we offloaded them there. And he also gave us his rifle, which was a American carbine. It was a lovely gun I had. He got the hat. He got my hat and I got his gun and the logs.
Are you allowed to just give away your gun?
Oh, I had to give it away. No, I had to give his away, and I couldn't bring it home. I wanted to. It was a beautiful rifle.
Well, why did he give you his rifle?
Well, he liked us, I think. No, he was AWL, he didn't give a bugger.
And I'm interested, I've heard this before, that the Americans or the British were fascinated with the Australian hats.
Yeah, they
Why?
they love our slouch hats. They do. And we finished up, we used those logs for the roof of our hut, our dugout, yeah.
Did you get another hat?
After I came home. Oh, no, you lose your hat. I think I did have one up there because I meant to leave with one. But I must have lost it. So they give me another one. If you lose, so it's something you can't help losing. You get wounded and they shipped out and you don't take your hat and you come back and you can't find your hat. You know, these things happen. So anyway, that's all right. Anyway, these logs then they were the reinforcement, and they covered the bags over the rest of the dirt. And they become virtually bomb-proof.
Virtually?
Virtually, yeah. Well, if a big bomb hit them, they wouldn't go through, but normal grenades and that kind of thing wouldn't hurt them. And you lived in there. They were mostly would hold 3 or 4 monks.
And can you describe what the inside of these dugouts are like? How they're set up for men to live in?
Yeah, on each side, there's you leave your bottom 2 feet or thereabout of the wall, which you put a bed on 2 sides, then you can build another bunk above them if you wanted to. Mostly did. But they were staked to the floor with timber, and they were fixed to the roof of the floor, and you put another bunk in between the bunk that was there and the one above it. Everyone likes living on the bunk on the bottom. Then you'd have 2 of them on each side of you, which that's 4 people living in there. Or 3, depends on what the position was.
Why did people like sleeping on the top, not the bottom?
On the bottom, not the top.
Oh,
because you had to climb up there. And they were awkward to get up to and into. But they were all right.
And the fact that they've been built or dug into the ground, were there bugs and lice and what sort of...
Well, that would have been eventually, I suppose, but we were digging them clean. We dug them clean, and they're fresh earth. We moved into hutches back on the line when we went up there. Most of them were good. One had been used by the British, we didn't like them, because they used one of them for a toilet. Some of us were allocated to that hutchie to live in. We had to clean it out pretty well. instead of going up to the bloody toilet or going over the hill to the toilet, they used the bloody dugout or the hoochie. But they were rude buggers. Anyway, that's all right. Anyway, that's about the story. The trench that led into it then connected to another trench which ran down the hill or whatever, and other hoochies are dug off that. And so the defence area becomes an area where you're safe in your hoochie, or you can get out in your trench, and most of our fire stepping places where the likely approach was covered by machine guns or rifles.
And we were talking just before, we could probably tell that story again about the safety of these dugouts, and that...
As far as the one thing it did affect it was rain. Later on, I think it was about October, November of 52, we were in an area, the reserve area really, where our platoon was, our company was, and we used to have to patrol. Most of these areas were a ridge or an outpost or something where you got a series of a trench mainly around an area with hoochies coming off it and a trench leading back to join up with another trench back somewhere else. Well, we were on one there one night, and I was on guard that night. The guard duty there was walking around the trench all night virtually, during 2 or 3 hours on whichever it was, and watching it in case any enemy tried to infiltrate around the thing. And it was pouring down rain. It was a very wet night. And all the hoochies led off this particular circular trench. And I'm walking past one entrance and I heard someone yell out. So I walked in to see what was wrong. I had a torch, of course, and I saw this fellow was on a trench and the wall was coming in. On top of his half his body was, at the bottom half was actually underground at that time. So I got the arms in, the top bunk was coming down on him. So I put my arms in and I put them across his head like that, so above his head, so that I could prevent that coming down on him, smothering him. He, at the same time, then I'm too busy, I can't do anything else, so I yell out and attract someone else's attention, and they came in, and they all came, a few came in, and they dug a lot of dirt away and pulled him out from under the arms, and I got my arms out. But otherwise, he could well have smothered in there. And the same night, actually, the Padre's batman did smother in a similar collapse in a tent where there was no one with him, no one to see him, no one to say anything. And there was a cyclone season, it was a very, very wet night.
Did this make you a bit afraid for the security of your walls?
No. It didn't fall in then, mate. It weren't going to fall in later. There was no more wet weather like that. Oh no, you don't. It's just one of those things that can happen. It did happen. Nothing really worries us. That didn't anyway.
And just out of interest, for example, on the Kansas line, when you'd all dug in, was it only, I guess, these sort of hoochies for sleeping quarters that you'd built, or were there ones that were used, I guess, for meetings or anything else?
For which?
Did they have any other purpose? Were there any for?
No, the living in and defence. That's all. The cooks in that area. They were not on the front line. They were back down over the ridges, sheltered back behind the ridge, the front line. Where we were on that Kansas line, I mentioned a while ago. I think the kitchen was about nearly half a mile back behind us, below the top of the ridges, where they couldn't be seen. They had camouflage, of course, and they did their cooking and that down there. And while we were on the Kansas line, we used to go back and get our meals. Other places they used to bring our meals, and in other places where there was no kitchen anywhere near, used the rations, mostly American sea rations.
And what sort of stuff had they kitted you out with? What was your uniform like at the time?
Well, you had jungle green trousers, a jungle green jacket, and khaki shirt or green shirt. Normal underwear, socks and boots. That was about it. That's summertime. Come winter time, it's an entirely different kettle of fish. In the winter time, you had a long pair of long johns with a split from the crotch to the back, to the waist at the back, and you got a pair of denim trousers with a split from the crotch to the middle of the waist at the back, and then you got a pair of waterproof trousers to wear, and you had a waterproof jacket, and you had a string singlet, which was a knitted mesh singlet of normal heavy fishing cord, about that size, with white string vest. And you wore a shirt over that and a pullover over that and a jacket over that. But the reason for the spring vest was that if you had a singlet on and you sweat or perspire, which you do when you work, you're a bit busy, the sweat turns to ice on your body and so on. With the string vest, they don't, because the string rolls on your body and it prevents ice forming. So no ice forms, it only forms in the string and then it keeps moving so it doesn't form. And your shirts don't get wet because the string vest stops. And the reason for your long johns and denim trousers having a slit, so it went to the toilet, you didn't have to sit on a cold seat, you just pulled the pants apart at the back and sat and squatted there. And that is the reason for it. Otherwise, if you sat on a tin or a seat with snow or ice or in cold weather, you get it lift off and you leave 2 big strips of skin there. That's true.
Ow.
Anyway, then in the winter, then when you go out then, when we went on that patrol, on top of that again, I had all that on. And then I had a parka, which is with a hood on, and it's completely wind and waterproof. It comes down about here, and you had parka trousers which came up as well. In your boots you had an inner sole of nylon, so deep. You had a big thick pair of socks in your boots. That nylon was to prevent, again, ice forming in one of your shoes and burning your feet. So that was what, when I fell in the water, I never got wet. Never got wet when I fell in the river that night. My boots laces froze, my trousers froze, and my jacket froze. But when I got in, the zips were all frozen, you couldn't undo them. But when I got in, then they just cut the outer clothes off, and the rest of them were dry. And so was my body.
So it was effective warm weather clothing?
Mm-hmm.
It was effective warm weather?
Oh, it was very effective warm weather. The worst part was your feet. They still got cold, even though you got the socks, but you only had boots, not fur lining or anything like that. Yeah.
And to begin with, what sort of stuff did you have in your kit bag when you arrived in Korea?
We didn't have a kit bag.
So what gear?
You left your kit bag. When you went into action, you left your kit bag back at the headquarters somewhere. We never saw our kit bags for 6 months or 12 months.
So what did you take with you into action?
Oh, nothing. Just what you were wearing. You had a couple of pair of socks, a couple of pair of underpants, a couple of shirts. That was it. Shaving gear. But you never took them anywhere. You left them in your hoochie.
Did you have any personal items with you?
Oh, yes. I had photographs, I had a Bible, I had my paybook and whatever. Not a lot of personal stuff really. Letters, of course, and that sort of thing. Very few little private things, yeah.
You said you had your Bible. Was religion or faith important to you?
No. Maybe it did seem at times.
In what way?
Well, you got a bit of comfort sometimes from reading it. I did. Actually, I had it with me the night I got bloody wounded. What was that? Yeah, in behind their lines that day, and I had a little Bible. It was the New Testament it was, and I read it.
What bits would you read?
I don't know. I read parts of it. I don't know what parts now. But it did give me a little bit of relief.
What kind of comfort or?
Oh, I don't know. Just I didn't feel so alone, I think, mainly. Maybe mum's teachings were coming through, I don't know. But no, I did carry that, and I did read it. Yeah.
Were things like faith or religion important to many of the guys?
No, I don't think so, no more than me. But I think everyone at some time or other, you think, well, maybe there is something after this, and maybe I should help to get myself ready for it. I don't know whether that's it or whether you believe that there could be a life hereafter. I don't know. I honestly don't know. In actual action, you don't seem to worry while the thing's going on. It's the same as the night after I was shot the leg. I coming down with machine gun, and I thought, this is it, you know. And I got over that one. Then I got down, I get his shell, and I thought, this is it. And I got over that one. But while when I thought the shell was going to hit me, I sat up to hit it, so they could hit me. And as soon as I knew it was going to miss me, I dived. And if I don't know what happened, but I didn't expect to get out of that. I thought I was going to die there, and it didn't worry me at that stage.
It didn't worry you?
At that stage. It worries you worry afterwards on the shit. You know, I've been so worried I peed myself out there once.
What had happened then?
My pants were wet. No, I don't know. I just lost control of my bladder, and that was it.
I mean, what had happened to scare you that much?
Oh, I think we come under fire when we weren't expecting it, something like that. You know, we were. One of our fellows was wounded by fire, and whether it was ours or theirs, I don't know to this day. But we were under fire, and we're squatting down on your hands and knees, like on your haunches, as if you. and I went. You know, that was it. The only time in my life. But anyway, I must have been frightened.
What did the other guys think about that?
I never told them. Other than beside that, none of them ever saw my pants because they throw it away after I got home.
What kind of thoughts were going through your head at this time?
I don't know. No thoughts other than what we were doing. I know, golly, what have I done? And that's about the extent of it, you know. But it can happen, it does happen. And whether it's fear or whether it's what, I don't know what it is. But it's not really fear. I've only been really frightened once, and that was after I was wounded the first time. I went back into the line, and I was scared stiff. And I wouldn't walk along a trench without being down under to make sure I was under the parapet, you know. And until the night that they looked like they were going to attack us, and okay, but I never felt it again after that. But I know what fear is.
What does fear feel like?
Fear feels like fear. There's no, you can't describe fear. Have you ever been so bloody scared, really scared of something? That is fear. If you're scared of something. And at that stage, because I was scared of getting hurt again or getting killed or whatever. And I was really scared. But it wears off.
Did you have any, I guess, physical reactions to this fear? Like
No.
shakes or not being able to eat? Or...
No. I could sleep as long as I was under cover. I could sleep and eat.
What if there wasn't any cover?
Well, if there wasn't any cover, you'd dig some, wouldn't you? We had to dig it. No, there was always cover. You can find cover on a flat bit of ground out there. You can find it. It's amazing how low you can get flat on the ground, and very little can touch you.
Did you ever like talk to the Padre or anything
No.
at the time? Would he ever come and talk to you?
Yeah, they'd come around. But we talked to them, and the Salvation Army were real good fellows. But they just like me, and they talk. They talk to us. They know what we're going through. They know how we feel, and there's no need to. You don't worry about it. You don't talk. you don't talk to each other about it. You don't talk to the padre about it. You know, you live with it. You've got to live with it.
Why don't you talk to each other about it?
Why, tell them you're a coward? Tell them I'm frightened? No. No, we wouldn't expect them to tell me, oh shit, I'm frightened, you know. You don't do that.
What do you talk to them about then?
Last leave in Tokyo, next leave in Tokyo, girl you left behind. What happened to the lieutenant when he spilled his tin of soup or something? Anything at all, whatever's going on. You just the same as everywhere else. You just talk about what's happening around the place. You don't talk about yourself. Or they don't talk about themselves. Not in that sense. They talk about, oh, poor old bloody Joey Bloggs, he got a load of VD in Japan, eh? All this kind of thing. That kind of talk happens, you know. Some of the mishaps become fun. All that kind of thing, you know. It's a funny old way of life, but it's the way of life. It is life.
Did you have any particular ways of coping with times when you felt really scared? Any?
You keep your head down. No. There's no way of coping. You live with it, you get over it, you get around it somehow, you know. No problems.
How about amongst you or any of the other guys that you knew? Was there any, I guess, superstitions or lucky charms or?
No. Not I know of.
Anything as a platoon that you had to sort of?
No, platoon is nothing. You're all proud of your platoon, you do your best. But there's nothing, actually your platoon is your platoon life. You try to be better than the next platoon. Your section life is there's 3 sections in a platoon, each one tries to be the best.
How does this help you in any way? Does it?
Oh, I don't know what it helps you. It gives you pride in your unit. Self-esteem, pride, call it what you will, same thing. Pride is self-esteem. And if you've got the best, you're proud, aren't you?
And what sort of motivation, I guess, does this add?
I don't know. The motivation. Motivation to do it? Motivation what? There's no motivation doesn't come into it.
I guess does.
It's something you're taught virtually to be the best or try and be the best. So you try to be the best. And if that's motivation, well, maybe it comes. Maybe army training does a lot of things. It teaches you to be self-reliant, to do as you're told, to work together, do the best you can. And that is to obey orders and do what you're told when you're told. See, otherwise, if you've got a position where a shell's coming and somebody down, so everybody goes down. If you don't go down, you're like to be stepped up and you're dead, or you could be. So, anything can happen. Like that, as soon as someone gives an order, go right, regardless of where you're going, you go right, you know. There's no one giving you an order for nothing, so you've got to do what you're told.
Is there ever a part of you that wants to say why?
No. Well, there might have been once, but it soon got knocked out of you very early in boot camp.
How did they knock it out of you?
Well, you got roused on, stood on, yelled at, abused, put on defaulters raid, cancelled leave. So you got knocked out of you. You learn. Yeah, extra guard duty. Very good.
And the time that you were on the Kansas line, can you take me through what you'd do, I guess, on a typical day? Take me through from the beginning to the end of the...
Well, actually, you get your breakfast in the morning, you get up, have a shave, or whatever, no showers.
How would you wake up? Who would wake you up? And
Oh, the bloke on guard duty. He'd wake the sergeant would wake the platoon, wouldn't, in a very big voice, So you get up, you have a wash and a shave, you have breakfast.
What would you have for breakfast?
Well, it depends what the cooks had, but mostly it was, well, it depends. On the Kansas line we had cooks cooking in a porridge and making it eggs or something like that anyway. But except one time they ran out of meat, and bacon and eggs, I think, and they got some turkeys. Turkey, lovely turkey. So we had turkey for dinner. We had turkey for breakfast. We had turkey for lunch. We had turkey for breakfast, dinner, lunch, breakfast, dinner. And mostly it was boiled, in a big vat. And in the finish, we were throwing our turkey away. We couldn't eat it. It was terrible. But it's a change of diet. It was good. We were quite happy to get back to bacon and eggs, or tinned eggs, or whatever was going. But that was, then after breakfast, you'd go, 2 or 3 things. You'd go back digging trenches, building hutches, doing a patrol. Not a patrol, a fighting patrol, but just a patrol of the area.
Can you take me through what you do on that patrol? How many men? How you?
There'd be a section go out. Well, various section patrols they were, with a corporal, a lance corporal, 2 red gunners, and about 5 riflemen. It's put out a forward scout and another scout, and then the main body with the red gun, and then a rear gunner, another corporal with that lot, the lance corporal with the red gun, and then there'd be and you just patrol through an area. No, just to get the idea of patrolling, there was no fighting patrols or anything like that in that area. Or out while you're out there, you might do a bit of field firing, practice range firing in the bush or into areas like that where you could find enemy. But it was only to keep in training for the job that was coming up. Well, when I had that American carbine, we took her out and we all tried and fired it, to see what it was like and so on. We all got to know it pretty well.
Was anyone curious about where it had come from?
No, no one knew where it came from. In my platoon, and the company probably, because when we were told to forfeit all foreign weapons were to be handed in, I wasn't going to hand mine in. The company major told the platoon commander to tell the platoon sergeant to tell me to hand it in. Everyone knew it was there, so I couldn't keep it. Yes, that's right.
And so after patrols, or what would you do then?
We come back and dig more trenches. I have lunch on the road mostly because American ration, mostly it's a sea ration or a British equivalent, which are not much good.
Tell me about the American sea rations.
The American sea rations, they came in 3 little cans. One was they were all various types of meat or stuff. There could have been lime and ham and beans, which was one of the dreaded things.
Why were they dreaded?
Lime and beans. They're terrible things. Lime and beans. Big white beans, about this bloody big. And you got them every day, you'd get one of them. And I reckon where we were camped, there was only hundreds of tins of lime and beans down over the bloody beach. You got chicken, hash, just general meat, spaghetti, baked beans, meat, ham and lime and beans, of course. And the various types of food, canned food like that, even corned meat. And then you got another tin with biscuits. You can have a couple of like a Jats biscuit type of thing. That had jam and biscuits. There was milk, there was coffee. There was a tin of peaches or something, a little tin, all little tins about this big. Cigarettes. There were 3 meals, plus a couple of cups of tea, plus cigarettes. And they were, on the whole, they were all right. They were good. But you'd go out and you take one of those tins. If you're going out for lunch, you take one of those tins and a tin of biscuits or something, and that was it. You come home and you have the other one at night.
And this might seem like a silly question, but how did you open the tins?
They had little portable tin opener in every can, about that big. You know, you run them around. Just wee little tin openers about that big with a sharp flange on them. And you know, run around the tin like that.
And they were on every tin.
In every pack. One in every pack.
How were they packed? What?
They were packed in a little square box about so big, which was about, tins about that big round, right? They'd have three long. In the middle would be cigarettes and the tin opener and the milk and the coffee.
How did you heat it up?
In a mug, you had your water and your mug on your hip, a water bottle with a mug underneath, and mostly you had hexamine tablets or something like that, little fire tablets. You light one of them, and it'll be just enough to boil that bucket, a cup of water. Then you put your coffee in it. No smoke. Or, if you're back in camp, you had a billy on a fire anyway.
And what would you do with the tins after you'd eaten the food?
Left them where we were. We didn't clean up. Or when we were in our trenches, we just throw them straight down over the hill. I reckon the Chinese would have found millions of tins when they came back later. But you got 20 blokes, there'd be you got 20 blokes, 30 blokes in this platoon, living in an area about the size of my unit here, all around, you know, a bit bigger. And there's about say 6 spots around there where near fire steps, where you ate mostly, and you throw them down the front. And it was handy too, because if the Chinese come up, they walk along your tins and make a noise. But so did the rats. So sometimes the rats got shot at too.
And what would you use as utensils to eat?
Everyone had a knife, fork and spoon and a set that folded together, and you carry that in your haversack pocket. You had them, and folding knife, fork and spoon. You had two Dixies, and you had your mug and water bottle. That was your entire canteen of cutlery.
And in winter, when everything froze, what happened to the food? The
Food?
tins?
Well, again, we used to get tins of soup with a fire in the middle of them. They had a wick down the centre of them. But when you take the top off the wick and you either strike a match or you struck it, I think, I'm not sure, and that would burn out down through your can, and by the time that burned out, your can is hot soup. Then you just open it up and drink it. Also, he had each dugout, we built a fire in them, and the fire was a box of sand, and it was fed by a gravity feed of petrol or diesel or something, and that used to drop onto the sand and burn, and it'd keep dropping in there while you're doing your cooking. And of course, there's not much smoke from that, but you ever seen those fires with fuel? There's a little black sediment floats around and around and around in the air. And during the winter times, we never had a shower or a bath or a wash past there over a period of about 3 months.
Yeah, you were telling us before on the last tape about soot coming in. Can you start from the top there?
During the winter, we had a problem with heat, with lack of heat in the hutchies. So we made little stoves out of an ammunition tin with sand in the bottom of it, and a feed from a tin of fuel into the sand, and you'd light the sand and have a fire all winter. You could cook on it, you could do what you like, but there's no smoke. No, that was all right. But also in the confined element of the dugouts or hutchies, the fuel would burn, and little very fine elements of soot would filter through the air, float around, and it was too cold to have a wash or a bath or anything like that. So you'd have a shave and you'd wash your face around about in front of your ears down to your chin, firing, and your hands up to the bottom of your shirt cuffs. That was the only part that ever got washed. It was when you never had a shower or a bath right through winter, so after about 3 or 4 months, you took your shirt off and your body was just black from the soot, particularly around the edges of the sleeves and around your hat, balaclava and that on your face. So well, it wasn't real good. Very not hygienic, but it was warm. That was the main thing. And I got wounded in December, the 30th of December, 12th of December. And I hadn't probably had a bath then for probably 2 months, a month anyway, 6 weeks. And we're living in these hutchies with the soot. So when I got down to hospital, I got no doubt when they undressed me, they found a lot of bloody dirty body. But that was true. But the only way to keep warm.
Was there any health issues with this?
Not with that, no. No, I don't know why, but there wasn't. You'd think there would be. But no, I think it was too cold for any germs anyway. When I came back in January, I came back to the unit after I'd been in hospital, and we were back, at that stage the unit was back in a rest area, so you could boil our water for morning and have a shave. So you get a mug full of water, boiling. By the time you finish shaving, there was ice on your shaving water. That's true. You'd get the warm water, wash your hands, wash your face, and we had hair in those days. Push the water through your hair, and it came ice out of your hair straight away. That's how quick it froze. It was very, very cold.
Did you ever expect it to be like this?
Never knew what to expect. I'd never seen cold weather like it, nor did any of us. It was completely new to us. All Australians probably. It's you're going, they're 20 or 30 degrees below there at times. It is cold. A lot of us saw our first snow there. I'd never seen snow before.
How warm was the hoochies in the...
Hoochies?
Yeah.
They were quite... You usually hung a blanket over the entrance. You'd hang a blanket up there to stop any... 2 reasons: stop light getting out to keep the warm in. In the summertime you pull them down, but while you have a light in there at night, you'd keep that blanket up for self-protection. Stop light getting out.
How were the summers?
Hot. I think nearly everybody in the battalion had malaria up there. In the summertime it was extremely hot, extremely humid, just like tropical heat. The malaria was rampant, the mosquitoes were very, very bad. Hot, that's about it. You couldn't keep cool. You couldn't get warm in the winter, you couldn't get cool in the summer. The only time you got there was you'd have a wash. You could only wash your body in a dish of water anyway. But sometimes we got a mobile shower. The Americans owned a mobile shower, and they'd send it around to the unit. So you'd all go down, have a shower, and the Americans used to give themselves a bloody suit, a new clean lot of clothing, but we didn't. We had to get back into the same ones. We'd get in the shower, wash our clothes, then get out and get back into them wet. And we had clean clothes anyway. The Americans used to look after their own. They'd take their dirty washing and give them clean stuff. Australia's missed out a lot of things.
How'd that make you, kind of feel when you'd see the Americans?
Didn't make any difference. Well, we used to fight with Americans, but not normally. If you go on leave, you would. Yeah. We go over to a brothel or a beer hall or whatever in Japan, and there's 2 or 3 Yanks there, and a few Australians, and there'd be a fight nearly every time. They used to have their area, or they'd take over a beer hall for a while. In the Gids we had one. The Americans used to look after it. Then we'd come in, and some of the Australians would come in. Then there'd be a fight, and then the Australians owned it for a while. But you'd always, the Americans had the 1st Cavalry Division was there. They had the big yellow patch, shoulder patch. What on it was it was halved by a slanting line across the middle of it. And on the bottom of it was a horse held top, one side or the other of that band was a horse's head. That was the cavalry. So of course every time we saw them at the badge, hey, you got the Bad's there, eh? The line you couldn't cross, the horse you couldn't ride, the shit you left behind. You'd start a fight every time. Americans didn't like that particularly.
And what else would you fight over?
Oh, girls, whatever else was going, you know. Someone would have a bloody, decide to have a girl and the Yankee would take her, or the Yankee or the Aussie would take her, whichever. The blokes trying out of first floor windows, goodness knows what. It was always on. Well, we had a lot of fun with them too, though. You go down, you go down to their canteen, you drink with them, all that, no problem.
Do you remember any particular fights?
Only the one that in the beer hall in Ginza, where the Australians took over the beer hall from the Americans, and it started with that saying about the 1st Cavalry Division. That started the fight, and at the finish there were no Americans, and it was taken over us, and New Zealanders, I might add, Australian and New Zealanders. I don't know when they took it back, but they would have got it. In the unit, when we're in rest area, they used to have a little flag with a rooster on it. It was a cock of the walk, and whichever company that was the cleanest, neatest unit and personnel would win this flag for a week and fly over their unit. It disappeared. And it was last seen flying over that beer hall in Ginza. The cock of the walk, the beer hall in Ginza. The flag from the 1 battalion. Yeah. I don't know who took it there, I don't know what happened to it afterwards. But that's where it was.
And so the Australians and New Zealanders won this fight?
Nobody won that fight. Oh, in the beer hall? Oh yeah, they won that one in the beer hall, yeah. Yeah, there were no Americans left, and that was remained until our leave was over anyway. It remained Australian, or Australian and New Zealand. Yeah.
Did you feel part of the Anzac tradition?
Annually, funny thing, you know, the Turks were there too, and they loved their Anzac Day the same as what we did. We had a lot of our fellows went down to the Turkey Battalion for Anzac Day. We all had a ceremony there together. In Korea.
What was that like?
Oh, well, just a bloody group of soldiers get together. Same reason, memory and memories of our fathers, grandfathers, or whatever. You know, it's Anzac Day, typical Anzac Day, and I think the Turks do celebrate it to a certain extent, particularly nowadays anyway, with the Turkish Gallipoli Memorial every year. You know.
How were the Turks, in your opinion?
We didn't have much to do with them. They were there, but they were away from us. We fought only. We were a British Commonwealth Brigade, and we fought with the British. Mostly we fought either next door, our brigade, which consists of Australian, British, New Zealand, Canadian, British Empire troops, and we'd fight next to either American battalions or divisions and Iraq divisions, which is the Republic of Korea divisions. They were more or less each side of us. We'd fit in places, you know.
Did you feel a part of the tradition of the Empire at all?
No. Never did feel part of the Empire. I suppose at school maybe we did Empire Day and all that, but no, not really. Canadians are as different to us as Yanks. You know, there's not a lot of... New Zealand and Australians are close. Otherwise, there's not a lot of closeness. Although... again, in armies there is a closeness between all soldiers, and it doesn't matter much which side you're on. Soldiers are soldiers, you know, and there is an affiliation between servicemen of any country. If the French Foreign Legion, or even the German Army, I know a lot of Germans since I've met since the war, and they're nice people, you know, no problem at all. And I think it's only... your association with men of a similar ilk, you know, it makes a difference.
What about the British? How did you find the British?
The British are the same. We've served with and worked with the British up there. And a lot of British troops joined the Australian Army for the Korean War too. As a matter of fact, one young fellow there was with me, got bayoneted in that attack on Operation Flora. He was a British soldier.
Did you notice anything about the way the British would structure their army?
Now, their structure is the same as ours. Their NCOs, I think, are stricter, if it's possible to say so. Their regular army are very strict, you know, in every... The Australians do incline to be not as strict. It's the same with saluting officers. There's no way a British sergeant wouldn't stamp his foot and salute his officer. The Australians would. They might salute him, you know, in passing, and that's about it. There's a lot of difference. It doesn't make any difference to a soldier at the finish. The soldier at the finish is still doing what he's taught to do and supposed to do. There's no need for a lot of pomp and ceremony, but it's got its place. It has got its place.
What about in your unit? What was the structure like in that?
Well, the structure of the unit as a unit or as the well-being of the people. The unit consisted of a company headquarters with a major in charge, an adjutant as a captain, the RSM, the regimental sergeant major, the orderly room, the stretcher bearers, snipers, intelligence office, transport, padre. They all were the headquarters, and then you had your platoons, transport platoon, your machine gunners, your mortars. But I suppose your actual snipers, stretcher bearers could come into a similar section as that. And they were the headquarters company. And then you got your four rifle, A, B, C and D rifle companies, which consist of a major in charge, a adjutant, captain, and a lieutenant in charge of each of the four platoons in a company. Each platoon has a lieutenant in charge of it. Each platoon is broken down into three sections with a sergeant in charge of each section. I'm sorry, the sergeant is 2 OC and the corporal in charge of each section, and the lance corporal behind him. The lance corporal is normally in charge of the Bren gun section, which is 3 men in each section. There's a Bren gunner, his carrier, and the corporal, and the rest of the riflemen.
Where do you fit in?
And at one stage I was a rifleman, at one stage I was in charge of a Bren gun, and then I got back to being a rifleman again. After I went it the first time, I don't know why, I was lance corporal then, and I felt I was supernumerary. I didn't actually have a job. I was given the job of lance corporal as a intelligence officer in the platoon, but there's no need for a platoon, and there's nothing to do. So I just felt I was supernumerary. And when I was wounded the first time I went out, and when I came back I applied to relinquish the rank of lance corporal and explained it. So they were quite happy about that. So I went back to being a rifleman. And I was such on the night of the wound the second time. But I didn't have a rifle. They gave me Owen gun back. Took my rifle off me that night. Maybe I was a bit better with it than the rifle, I don't know.
And how was your job with the Owen gun? What would you do with this job?
Well, the Owen gun, normally you guarded the machine, the Bren gun and the carrier. The Bren gun had a Bren gun. It's a big cumbersome, there's one in there, big cumbersome weapon compared to a rifle. About twice as 3 times as heavy. And the Owen gun is only small and easily managed. So the lance corporal's duty was to guard his Bren gun and his Bren gun carrier so that they could function without being worried about anything else. And if you're handy with a Bren gun, you can do a lot of damage. That was that. And when we went into that particular raid on that night on Fauna, they gave me the Owen gun. And I was to guard a bomber. We had a couple of bombers with us. They were to destroy the bunkers with homemade bombs. Anyway, I got shot just before anything functioned, or nothing functioned as far as I was concerned. I didn't know whether they did throw. I mean, they threw some bombs, but I didn't see the result of it. I didn't I didn't get mine thrown.
Describe these homemade bombs. What?
They were actually gelignite wrapped up in hessian into 4 blocks. There's 4 sticks of gelignite. So they're wrapped up with wire and hessian, and with a fuse from a grenade in them. And the idea of it was not to kill. The idea was to throw them into a hoochie, and then race into, knock everyone out in there, race into a hoochie and bring out a knocked out man and take him home. That's the way we wanted to get prisoners. It didn't work. It didn't work.
It's a pretty dangerous.
Yeah, well, war was a dangerous job, I suppose. The idea was to come along and you jump. This is the difficult, hard part, was to jump off the top of the ground into the trench. And you don't have even trenches. Could be 5 feet, it could be 8 feet. You wouldn't know until you get to the bottom. It's very difficult to work under those conditions. Also, then you've got to find the entrance to a hoochie, throw it in whether it's occupied or not. You don't know whether it's occupied or not. There's a lot of difficulties with the job, but it should have worked and didn't.
Isn't that how'd you feel about a job where you had to go into opposition
Well,
trenches?
I wasn't the only one. The few of us had to do it. Would have had to do it. No problem. It's not nice. It's you don't know what you're getting into. This is true. There's nothing much you can do about it.
Why did they want to take prisoners?
To find out what they could about the enemy, what units were there, whether they'd recently changed. Some units, their units were like ours, they'd change all the time too, and you want to know who's fighting you, what unit's there. If it's a Marine division or whether it's a bloody cavalry division, you want to know what kind of troops you're facing and what likelihood they have of attacking you, and worse than you can do to them. But they used to do the same. They'd try and snatch our fellas, put out fighting patrols, ambush patrols. You try and put an ambush out where the enemy are likely to come and try and snap on one of them as they go past, which they did some of ours, we did some of theirs. Part and parcel of it. We had a few prisoners taken from us on ambush patrols. We lost a few, got a few ourselves, lost a few men doing it.
Do you remember catching any prisoners?
I didn't.
Do you know what happened to the prisoners?
They were taken back to company headquarters, then to finish up in the bloody Korean prisons, the prisoners of war. But they were interrogated at length by, firstly, our battalion, our brigade, and then on to the division, and so on, right back through every sphere of army life back to the final interrogation, which would have been by the South Korean army. And then they were locked up as prisoners of war. Some of them died from the result of injuries received by taken prisoner. Some of ours did too.
What kind of injuries would they receive?
Could be wounded in action, could be bayoneted, could have broken limbs, cracked heads. Depends how you get him.
So, at first you said you were taken to the Kansas line. Tell us about going to the front line.
Well, from the Kansas line, we were eventually told we were going up to relieve the Leicesters, the Leicesters I think it was, the British Leicester, the British Light Infantry, Durham Light Infantry, Deal Light Infantry. So we went one morning, they loaded us up with, one night it was actually. I went up first with an advance party a couple of days before. There was about one from each platoon went up, and we fitted in with the equivalent platoon of an English battalion. Our battalion would take over their battalion, and our headquarters would go where their headquarters was, and our rifle companies would take the position of their rifle companies. So they'd send up one man from each section, from each platoon, I'm sorry. The platoon, well, there's 4 platoons per company. And there's 4 companies, 16 men would go up, plus a couple of headquarters, so there'd be about 20 men would go up as an advance party. And we would be allocated, I'd be allocated to the position of 4 platoon in their B company, and someone else would go to 3 platoon there, B company, and so on, And then we learned where the platoon setup was. The headquarters are there, sections are here, and so on. We operated with them for 2 days while we saw what they did. We went on patrols with them when they went out so that we'd know where to take our own patrols back to the next time we went out. When we started on our own, then we had to take our patrols out to show them where the patrols areas were, where their listening posts, standing patrols, and that kind of thing, where they set them up. And we did that. And then the next day, at dusk, the British would stand to at afternoon, and the Australians would come up about 9 to 10 o'clock at night, between after dark, so they could get up without being seen by the enemy. They get up, trucked up. They would alight from the trucks, and they'd take over the British position. The British would get into the trucks and go back. That was all done in a matter of 4 or 5 hours. We were all in position and stood to daylight, the same as the British would have done if they'd been there. So, in actual fact, to all intents and purposes, the Chinese were unaware that a changeover had been made, but they often did know. They might have had patrols out, they might have heard vehicles, many things. And then sometimes they knew who was there, sometimes they didn't. Because one day we'd taken over a particular, I know which one it was, one of the positions, and they intercepted, the Koreans intercepted a Korean army broadcast saying that the company, the long knives and big hats had come taken over. With our long bayonets, we use 18-inch bayonets, they don't have bayonets that long, nobody else did. And the big hats, of course, was the slouch hat. And they knew Australians were in there. But they broadcast. They didn't know what companies or anything, but they knew that the long hats and big knives had arrived.
Would there be any messages or sounds coming from the Chinese?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes they used to send an aeroplane over talking to you sometimes. Tokyo Rose or whatever we called it, I forget. They'd broadcast messages to us, going home, why here, fighting the American War and so on and so on. But nothing.
What did they sound like?
It just sounded like a spruik on a loudspeaker. It was the British voice, you know, or the British voice, wasn't a Japanese or Chinese voice, talking in English. And just like a truck going around the street broadcasting, it's no different. Sounds the same. They're broadcasting down on you. A little bit of aeroplane noise, but you can't see aeroplanes at night. No way to see them.
So the aeroplane would
Yeah, they were up in an aeroplane broadcasting down. I had a little Tiger Moth or something.
And the British voice, do you know who this was, this British voice?
No one knew it was. No one ever knew, I don't think. Well, they might have found out later, but didn't know those days who were doing the broadcasting.
And so you mentioned one thing, but what kind of things, other things would they say to you?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of things would they say to you apart from what you mentioned?
Oh, go home for Christmas. Yeah, it depends what's on. They just, why are you here mainly? You know, they're killing the Korean people and so on. It was mainly propaganda, whatever propaganda come around. Sometimes they drop out safe passes. If you want to come over to the Chinese, you bring up safe pass, you're guaranteed freedom for life and all this security. Somebody used to carry them, just in case. Nobody ever used them, I know of.
What did they look like?
Oh, they were like a certificate, about 6 or 7 inches long, about 4 inches deep, a bit like a enlarged banknote of some kind with a border on it, and then say a security pass, something like that on it, you know. And then I wish to come over to the Chinese people. I'm sick and tired. I had some, I haven't got them now, but I was just to get what was written on them. But that's the idea of it, you know. Give up fighting and want to take over, become a friend of the Chinese. This is the kind of thing that was on it. But also, they had them too. The Americans dropped them on them as well. They went both ways.
So you said you'd carry them just in case. What do you mean?
Oh, well, we carried them. We didn't know whether they'd ever work or not, but if you got taken, maybe they would. I don't know. I don't think anyone would have ever used one. I've never heard of anyone. I didn't have one anyway, most of the time. I didn't have one when I was out there anyway.
And so what differences were there in the front line for living kind of quarters?
Very little. Most of the front lines were all the same. They were all, even the Chinese were the same. You had a trench system which came in from, well, your trench system started out of sight, and then it came over just a little bit of a track into a hill until it got down to body depth, or just over body depth, and then it followed the contour of the ground then. It followed the ridge tops mostly, and along the spur of a ridge. And when you come to a knoll or some part that could be of interest, not just on a straight line of ridge, where the spur came out of it, they put a platoon in there, so the trench would come off the main platoon down onto that spur, and then it'd circle around and come back onto the same spot again. And then you put your fire positions around that trench, and your dugouts towards the centre of it. You dig in there, camouflage it with whatever you could, and so it comes back to the main trench, and the trench keeps on going again. It's like a system of streets as much as anything else. Another knoll, two, so it goes out into two, and so on, you know, until it goes out as far as you want it to go. Mostly that forward one was looking straight across to the forward one of the Chinese, mostly across the valley.
About how far away were the Chinese from where you were?
Well, sometimes we're 400 yards, sometimes a mile. The hill and 227 and 355 would have been no more than 400 yards apart. The Chinese owned one and the Allies owned the other.
Which one did you have?
355, the biggest. But that was fought over many times early in the war. It was some of the hardest fighting in the Korean War was done on 355 because it was a big hill, held a lot of Chinese, and we had to take it off them. This before I went there. The Americans took it. The Americans lost it. Then the Americans got it back, and then the Chinese got it back, and it was fought over. But 227, which is only say 400 yards across, it wouldn't be many more than that. And at one stage we were the nearest platoon to their side on the left of the 335. And we had our platoon commander killed there. We had a bit of a problem there one night. They were coming in, there was trenches right throughout. They'd come in and throw grenades at us into our position. So the platoon commander decided this night that they'd take a patrol out and try and ambush this Chinese as they were coming in to throw grenades, but I think the Chinese got there first. And when they went out, they threw grenades, and the lieutenant was carrying about 5 grenades in a water bottle carrier on his hip, and they all exploded together. He died.
So you just named these hills by numbers, or were there any other names?
Little Gibraltar was 355. Matthew, Mark, Luke and John were the left 4. There was... who was a big girl, big busty girl, a film star? The blonde. Betty Grable, yeah. Betty Grable was one. 2 hills together. Yeah, they all went on the names, whichever. The Hook was another one. The Hook's in there, in that book I showed her. We were stationed on the Hook for a while. Depend on the name and the shape of the hill. 355 was Little Gibraltar because in the distance it did look a bit like Gibraltar Rock, you know. So, away it went. You name them whatever you want to name them. Yeah.
Who would come up with the names, or how would they form?
Whoever was there. Actually, Little Gibraltar, they were all numbered. There was no names on maps. They all had a number, and that was the height of the hill. 355 was 355 metres, 227 was 227 metres, 220 was 220 metres, and so on. And that was the height of the hill, above sea level or whatever level they take it at. And they were named then, where you've got, well, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, there's 4 hills there, and there's 4 names together that you can't forget. Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. You can't forget them.
So what was the differences of being on the front line for, like, just general day-to-day living?
Well, you lived at night, didn't you? You worked at night and slept by day when you could. Sometimes, you see, on your night work there was, or sometimes you had to dig your trenches, deep in your trenches at night, because you couldn't do it daytime. But you had a standing patrol out, which is a patrol around about 200 or 300 yards in front of your platoon section area, in case if any Chinese or Koreans were coming up the hill, you would see them, you'd fire on them, or you'd get message back to your company, platoon and company, so they would know where there was enemy coming, and then you got back the best you could if you could. Then we had ambush patrols, then we had standing patrols, and then we had fighting patrols. You'd go out, try and find some of their patrols to fight out in the valley. Well, many kinds of patrolling. There was prisoners, snap ambush patrols, snap patrols, and so on.
Well, tell us about some of the patrols that you went on. Not the one you were injured on. We'll talk about that later.
No, well, you go out. There was a creek, there was a creek. Every valley had a creek, and I suppose this one had no name that I know of. We're down, and we go out and we would form up along that creek, because we knew the Chinese would come up the other side of the creek, and we'd stay there, go out as soon as it got dark, you'd go out, you'd come in just before daylight, and you'd find out if there's anything going on. If you hear any firing, you'd try and get a position, pinpoint a position on your map so that you could report it when you come in, the direction of fire. So from this point to there, the machine gun's firing at 280 degrees, so they get the map next day and line them up. This is the type of thing you did, to try and isolate or locate enemy positions as much. Your fighting patrol, you'd go out and sweep a valley or sweep an area, hoping you'd come across some enemies. We never ever did. Actually, never found anything on our fighting patrol. But not in the ones I was on, I mean, but we did, we lost quite a few men on patrols like that. We lost a few prisoners, a couple of prisoners too. One fellow was out, and we were on 355 at the time, and he was out, a different company, but he went out, and they ran into a fire. They were ambushed on a patrol, and this one fellow was wounded, and he was taken by the Chinese. I don't know what happened, but you could hear him screaming nearly all the way across the valley. He never came home, his body's never been found. I don't know. But that happened.
What kind of thoughts were you having when you would hear this?
Not much you can do. You can't think, you can't do anything about it. Just wish he'd stop. It's certainly unsettling. But it's when you go on these patrols, you know bloody well it can happen. Sometimes it did, mostly didn't. Mostly it didn't. Which was good. When we went on to that 355, the Canadians had been there before us, and they'd virtually lost control of the section nearest to 227 where we went in. The Chinese had taken it over for a little while, and then the Canadians pushed them off again, and then we relieved the Canadians. So we took over from a Canadian brigade, the Australian brigade took over, and we were allocated to this particular section where the enemy had been in, and they'd booby-trapped a couple of the things in there. There was a mortar pit where we kept mortar bombs. And just after we moved in there, the lieutenant said to the sergeant, "You get a couple of men to clean up, check that ammunition pit." So they did, and it was booby-trapped. And luckily, they saw the trap before it went, as it went off, and they ducked. It was a grenade left with a pin out. As soon as it went off, you hear them. And these fellows dived out onto the ground, and the bomb, it went off. It would have killed them if they'd been there, but they were out of it. One of them got a slight scratch, nothing, which was good. But you know. Then they were there at Christmas time, and Christmas morning we wake up and there's presents and bloody Christmas cards and all tied on the wire. Chinese went up and tied them on the wire during the night. That from the end of the wall, they're away from 10, 20 feet away from us. I wasn't there, but I was there, but they did that while them blokes were there.
And what would have happened
If we didn't see them or heard them there, they'd have been shot at. No noise. They were pretty good.
But what would have happened if you opened the Christmas present?
Well, nobody ever did, I don't think. They were left there. I don't know what were in the little parcels, but what they were, nobody ever found out. As far as I know, they weren't open.
They weren't booby traps?
I don't know. They never took them. No one took them. Little parcels were there and cards were there. They got them in a card, but I think the parcels were left. Never heard anything about them anyway.
So how was a platoon structured, not, say, a fighting patrol, I mean?
Well, patrols were, there was a corporal in charge and 5 or 6 men. Depends. Mostly didn't take a Bren gun on those. Mostly they were only before 5 or 6 riflemen and a sergeant and a corporal. A sergeant and a corporal and 5 or 6 men. A lot of times the sergeant didn't go either. The corporal and 5 or 6 men. They'd go out and listening. It depends on. Your fighting patrols would be a platoon, which would be a sergeant and 3 sections. A ambush patrol would probably be a full section with a Bren gun. Just a normal searching patrol would only be about 6 or 7 men. And the outpost was 3 men. That was about it. The listening post was about a lance corporal and 2 men. That type of thing.
And how often would you go out?
Every night. No, the platoon would go out every night. Or the section, each platoon would take out every night 1 or 3 sections. Sometimes there'd be 2 sections out, sometimes 1, or sometimes 3. But there were patrols out from the platoon every night. That was part of your work. Every night of the week. And then you come home. And when we first went up there, they used to send us back to the cancer line sometimes. Not from the front position, but where we first took over from the lessons, we used to go back to the cancer line and work through the day and work patrol at night. You get no sleep at all.
Stop it there, there's not much. Oh, just one more question. But how often, there'll be a patrol every night, but how often would you on average go yourself?
Twice a week. 2 or 3 times sometimes, maybe a week. Depending on the patrols. Mostly, you're not overworked in that sense, but every night's a worry. Every time you go out, there's another little worry, another grey hair or something. The listening patrols were undertaken at night mainly by 3 men. You'd go out, adopt a position, which is approximately 300 or 400 yards in front of your position, unit position, and you just sat there, or stood there, standing patrols, listening patrols, whatever you call them, But no one ever stood on them, of course, but you just sat down or lied down on the ground, where you could get a good view of the area between yourself and the enemy, or the bottom of the hill anyway, where if anyone was coming up, and they had to come across your line of vision. And as soon as if they did, you warned your platoon, company or whatever of the danger of approaching enemy, and then you scuttled back to the comfort of your lines. You weren't caught out there, because if the enemy starts charging up the hill and our fellows start shooting and everybody's shooting and you're in the middle. So as soon as you warn them, you scuttle back into your line. Didn't want to get caught there.
And what sense did you have of how far away the enemy were and how many?
Well, that would depend. If there was a big patrol, if there was a big fighting patrol coming in, for argument's sake, a company, there'd be a lot of noise. You would know. And the Chinese had another proclivity for bashing tin cans and making noises like the Japanese did to a certain extent. and yelling and firing guns and going on as they approached. But if they're sneaky patrol, they're little fighting patrols, ambush patrols, they would come in about 10 up to maybe 20, 30 people. But those ones, well, you had a rough idea because mostly you can see, even at night you can see. Even the darkest nights, except when it's really raining, but most nights you can see enough to know there's movement down there. I've even seen somebody just bushes jump up out of the ground, run across the paddock. They didn't really do it, but they sounded like, looked like they were doing it, you know. But no, there is that movement, you can see movement at night. And it depends, and noise. So you report noises or you report, you got a radio with you, radio contact back to your platoon, and they might send up a flare and give you a view. If the flare's up, you can see as good as daylight.
Can they see you?
No, because we're sitting down, lying down. We're not moving. If you look across the paddock, and there's three fellas walking across and one fella lying down, they put a flare up, you'll see the three fellas walking, you won't see the fella lying down. It's the same thing. They don't see us, but we can see them. Mostly anyway, you're lying amongst little bits of bush and stuff, so your outline's broken. You're not standing up.
You mentioned that the Chinese would bang tin cans and this sort of thing.
They did do that at times, yeah.
What was, I guess, your reaction to them doing that?
Well, actually, it never happened to me, so I don't know. But they did do that. I never had it happen to me. I don't know. Actually, it's amazing the amount of noise a moving patrol makes. And if you put a flare up, I've been there, I was acting as a decoy one night for one of the raids when our fellow was raiding a particular hill and I was the enemy. And as soon as we heard the noise, we had to put a flare up to let our company know that they were making too much noise and to let us see where they were. We put this one up and there were only 30 fellows coming towards me. It looked like 100, you know, in the night light with the shadow and the movement. There's a great mass of fellows coming towards you, but we know there's only 30 people. And yet, if you put a light up like that, you'd see a hell of a lot more people there than there were in actual fact. But the flares are a great thing.
What was the feeling like when the flares went up?
Oh, well, mostly you just stopped. Whatever you're doing, you stopped. Stood stone, muddled still. And you don't move and you don't see you. We had them the night we went on that fauna parade patrol. We were going across and the flares went up about halfway across. And whatever you were doing, you just stopped and stood or sat. Or, you know, you didn't move until the flare went out. And then you moved again. They wouldn't see you. There's no movement. Your clothing is virtually the same colour as the ground. Your face is black and there's no, or discoloured. There's no trace, unless you're throwing it. The only shadow they'd get is the shade on the ground, because the rest of it is just the same colour virtually as the vegetation. So you don't see them if they're not moving. The eyes tell lies.
Would the Chinese use flares?
Yes.
Were you ever out on a patrol when a Chinese flare went
Yes.
up? Can you tell me about what happened?
Nothing happened. We just stood still, nothing happened. They didn't see us either.
How long does it take for a flare?
They depend on the size. The 2-inch flare is only about 2 minutes, a minute and a half, 2 minutes. 4-inch flare is about 4 or 5 minutes. They go pretty high too.
What's the effect like on your eyes after the flare?
You lose a certain amount of night vision. Takes a while to get your night vision back. I think different now with the night vision goggles and all that kind of thing. We had nothing like that. And if you got light, well, it affected your eyesight immediately. But then it affected theirs as well. So 6 to 1.5 an hour.
Was it ever harder to get back
With what?
into Was it ever harder to get back into your safety area
No.
because your night vision had
No, you
been?
knew the area. If you're only 200, 300 yards out, there's a fairly well-worn track, you know, because you've been sitting there for 12 months watching, or someone has been, and you know the track. You go down the side of Ridge, then you just swing around there and down. You know it. You get it registered in your mind, and you follow it back blindfold, really.
And you mentioned ages ago passwords. Was there a particular password to
Yeah,
get?
most nights you had a password in frontline areas anyway, and if anyone came up, you called the password, which might be orange flower, repeat words, you know. But a lot of my telephone, not what's W words, royal. See, the Chinese can't say R's. I think R's and L's they have a problem with. So it was always a regal is weagle, and so on. You know, the Chinese have difficulty pronouncing them. But some of them are different. But I guess to get their word, but like a royal telephone, anything like that, you know, whichever it is, home today or home late or something like this. The two words, if they'd call the password, you'd say home, or he'd call home and you'd say late. You had to repeat the other half of the password. That was the idea of them.
What happens if you got it wrong?
Well, that caused problems. Like that night I came in, they said, what's the password? I said, I don't know. I knew what it was last night, which I did. I forget what it was now.
Who would let you know what the new password was?
It was put out by the company every day. The company headquarters would decide on the password. That'd be filtered down to the platoons down to the sections and so on, sections to the men. The company commander, or maybe the brigade, I don't know. The company commander was our area. The battalion would send the password down to the companies would send it down to the platoons would give it to the sergeant would give it to the sections, the corporals would give it to the men. And that's the way it worked, right down the chain of command.
And so were there any attacks while you were at Little Gibraltar from the air or?
They had no planes. They had biscuit, but they used to fly around at night. But they had no aeroplanes. But that stage, see, the American and the Australian and the British had complete air control of that area. The MiGs were killed out early in the war, before we got there.
How about shelling or?
We got shelled pretty prominently, pretty quite often. It was both shells and mortars. The Chinese were very good mortarmen. They could put mortars very close to where they wanted them. Their artillery was quite good, very good, probably better than ours. But,
what's it like to be shelled?
we've been in a hailstorm, big hailstones. Something like that only is much more worse. You don't know where they're going to land or where they're going to hit. Well, they're coming around here, maybe, but most of them. You don't get that many killed from shelling unless they put really intense shelling on. We had, I think there's one day there was something like 500 shells in an hour and nobody got hit. Depends.
What does it look like?
What? Shelling? Well, it's just like, well, you hear the rush of a bit like a jet aeroplane coming towards you, and then it hits the ground and an explosion and a big cloud of dust. Finish. Unless someone gets killed, hit. You have to be a cloud of dust. And then the next one comes and so on. And it's somewhere amongst all these photos there, I've got a photo of the Hook, the Chinese position Hook being bombed. And all you can see there is big clouds of dust. You can't see anything else. And that's what it's like when you're being shelled yourself or when they're being shelled. Just every explosion causes a mound of dust. And that's it. There's a lot of noise. Very few casualties really for shelling. Mortars are worse. But then again, it's the same thing. They've got to get them on position. It's very hard to be real accurate.
What's the difference between being shelled and mortared?
Mortars are a bomb that, they're a bomb, not a shell. A bomb is thrown up into the air. It goes up into the air as high as the trajectory is set for, and then it turns over and comes down as a bomb. A shell goes like a rifle bullet, straight from the rifle barrel to the point of impact, which is mostly in an arch anyway, but you point There's a different, one's coming down on you, the other one's coming in towards you from the front. The ones coming down, you don't know where they're going to. They can come straight down and land on top of you or they're beside you. The shells are only going to hit you this way, if they hit you. Doesn't matter much. If either of them hit you, you're not going to tell about it anyway. So you finish.
And what's the difference in sound? And
You know, there's a whistling effect, a sizzling effect with the mortars. The shells are like a jet plane coming in, like a very fast flying project. The other one is only, well, I suppose a flutter would be more like a flutter would coming down. You know, that's the difference. No greater noise, not amount of noise with mortars.
and where did you go when? What was your safe spot when the shelling?
When we're being shelled, into hoochie. Into our hoochies. Our dugouts.
And what would you do?
Wait till the shelling stopped. Or every now and again, someone would have to go out and have a look to see if there's no Chinese coming up the hill. No, that's well. You take cover. Actually, you can take cover in a trench, particularly from shelling, because your trench is say 5 feet deep, and the shell's got to go across it. The mortar comes down into it. The shell goes across it. The shell can't actually land in the bottom of the trench. So you're reasonably safe lying down in the bottom of the trench from shells. Mortars can come down. A mortar can land this far off the trench and not hurt you. A shell landing that far off the front end of the trench can throw a lot of muck in. A mortar can land right in on top of you in the trench, a shell can't. So they both serve a purpose, but neither of them are 100% effective. I don't know which one I'd prefer.
Were you more scared of one?
No, I don't think so. You're scared of everything. Both of them may be the same amount, but no. You're scared of them. Everyone's scared of them.
And when at this time were you wounded?
I was wounded on the 12th of July first. That was when I was on the listening post. And I got shrapnel in the back of my left arm.
Can you just tell me how, walk me through that experience?
Mm-hmm.
Can you just tell me what was preceding that and what?
Well, we were out, the 3rd Battalion were doing an attack on the Chinese. And they were, the 3rd Battalion was our next unit. They were on one point and we were on the next point back here. So they put our patrol out that night, so to give any advance of any Chinese counter-attack which would come our way. And there was a lot of shelling going between the Chinese and between the 3rd Battalion and the Chinese, and a certain amount of it coming our way as well from the Chinese. Just, anyway, I went out on patrol and we had to come on the air every hour at 5:30 so that they could get any messages to us or we could get any messages to the unit that we wanted to. So at 1:30 in the morning I switched on the radio and got up on me with my head on my arm like so. The shell went off behind me, killed me in the back of the arm. And as soon as, it was time to be on the air anyway, so I called our section and our platoon and told them that I had a pigeon, which meant we wanted to carry her. We waited then till, first I made sure the others, the 2 others, they weren't wounded or anything, so they were all right. They sent out a stretcher bearer, which we didn't need, and they sent out, anyway, the corporal came out with them. He had to take my place on the guard, and I went back in. I walked in and they were wounded my arm. But the only way I could get in was to tell them we had a pigeon, so to carry it out. I went back then to a casualty clearing station and so on from there.
And what did it feel like?
Actually, the wound itself, the getting shot, it is just like somebody hit you with a hoe handle from a fairly hard hit. It's just like a very hard slap with a lump of wood. And it just knock your arm out from under me and so on. But there's no pain, It's just that real hard thump. And then about a minute later it started to burn. The shrapnel was red hot. It was very hot. And in the instant it hits you, there is just this feeling of a real hard hit with a lump of wood. And about a minute later, then you start to feel the burn. So on, and it cools down eventually after a while, and there's no more problem. It gets sore. But that's generally the feel of it. The main idea of the operation is to get back as clear as possible and clean the wound out. Because when they come through, it comes through your clothing, and it takes fragments of cloth into the wound with it. And they've got to get... That cloth will kill more men than the wound will, because it turns gangrene. So they clean that out, and it's got to be cleaned out properly. And, then they leave the wound open, they take it back to the hospital, and they do another clean out of it, and take whatever's in there out, and they leave it open. It's left open for about another week. Well, that's what happened to me anyway. They sent me back from there to another hospital, and eventually from the Cure, where they operated on it about a week later, and took all the scab and the bad flesh and that out and stitched it up. And it was clean by then, so that was that.
Just take me through, after you'd called for a carrier, the exact places that you went?
Yes, firstly the platoon, the stretcher bearers came out, and I walked back with them to my platoon, and we had to go from there back to company casualty clearing station, which meant that we had to cross a bit of certain open country, so they sent a jeep up under Camouflage Road, and I walked back to the company headquarters and down the ridge there to where the the end of the road was, where I got a jeep, a medical jeep, back to the battalion casualty clearing station. They looked at the wound and tidied it up a bit. And then they rang the Indian Field Ambulance, and I think it was 60th Indian Field Ambulance. They sent an ambulance up to the casualty clearing station and took me back to Norwegian Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. And there they operated on the arm, and I went from there back then to a British casualty clearing station.
Just what was the Norwegian MASH like?
Well, it's just like the Mobile Army Surgical Hospital you see on MASH. Same thing. There's operating theatres, all tents, there's operating theatres, there's beds, there's wards and all that type of thing. They have their own kitchen accommodation for staff and all that kind of thing. They've got their doctors. And it's virtually the same, very similar setup to the MASH that you see on the movies. And I don't remember any women in those Mobile Army Surgical Hospitals. There may have been, I don't remember any. Went from there back to a casualty clearing station.
What were the Norwegians like?
Doctors and nurses.
Were they standoffish, friendly?
No, they were the same as everybody else. They were there doing a job, and they're the same as a doctor in the hospital here. How do you describe a doctor or a nurse in the hospital here? You can't. They're people doing a job, you know. There's no difference. The doctors and nurses, they're all the same, I think, as far as I'm concerned, all over the world. Everywhere I've been. You go there, the doctor talks to you, and the nurses, they look at you, they know what to do. There's no difference. I can't ever see any difference in what nationality has. Americans are the same. You go down there, maybe they're a little bit freer, but then again, maybe I was there a little bit longer. But you get up and have breakfast with them and so on. They're good. And they, of course, once they've operated on, you come to, and then they put you on an ambulance and send you back further, so on. You get back a bit further, and they send you back further. I was in a hospital which is an old school in Korea, in Seoul, an old school was turned into a ward there, a hospital. And they treated us there for a while. There were British nurses there. Then we went from there over to Curé.
What was it like to see nurses?
Good. It's just like we're seeing women anyway, mate. If you haven't seen women for a while, they're lovely. If you've seen too much of them, they're not much good. No, they're lovely. They were.
And would anyone, in a good-natured way, give them not a hard time, but a bit of a...
I don't think so. Nobody really felt like that. Most of the blokes there didn't feel like giving anyone a hard time.
And how was this hospital in Seoul set up?
Oh, yeah, it was just like a general hospital, like an old-time general hospital. Big open wards, schoolrooms were wards. Of course, so you'd get 20, 30 beds to a ward. There was a brick building, a two-storey building. Open verandas. Something like Greenslopes was before they done it up, actually. And it was quite good.
And how was your arm feeling?
Sore. It was sore. It had a big long scrap down there, and it was open, of course, and it was a bit smelly. I had to go back on a plane. They flew us on a Dakota plane from Korea to Japan, and in a little narrow bed about this wide, I'm about that wide. So I stopped like this, and the arm up here, and it done his thing, it nearly drove me mad all the way across.
Why did it smell?
It was bad. It was infected, I think. It stunk.
Were you worried about any long-term effects from it?
Not really. Oh, no, I don't think so. You thought about it, but I don't think I was worried. I wouldn't be worried about it, I don't think. More worried about my leg later on. And, no, don't be worried.
What were your, I guess, thoughts on the fact that you'd been wounded?
Well, I don't know. About the first thought I had was maybe I'll get home now. I didn't.
How much did you want to go home?
I want to be home, yeah. I'd only just been married, hadn't I? I'd only been married a week before I left home. And I did want to go home. But I didn't.
Did you write to Betty and tell her what had happened?
I told her.
What was her reaction?
I don't know. I wasn't home. No, actually, see, my mother's name was Alma. Was Ada, I'm sorry, and she was Mrs. A. Young, and my dad was A. Young, Alf Young, so that was Mr. and Mrs. A. Young. My wife was married, and her name was Alma, which we know as Betty. And it's her address. When I left, she was staying with Mum and Dad, and she later went back to her parents, and though her address was my next of kin was shown as Mum and Dad's address. So when the army sent a wire to say that I'd been wounded in action, it went to my home. Where Mum and Dad was, Betty was down to her parents' place, which was about 10 miles away. They didn't have a telephone. Dad got the message in the night, early in the night, and he said often he walked 10 miles down to tell Betty, and then 10 miles home again. And then he had no sleep that night. But anyway, we got over it. Later on, then he got in December, I got wounded again. I was posted missing in action first, so I went out and I didn't come home with them. So they sent him a telegram to say that I was previously reported wounded, now missing in action in North Korea. Third advice to be given. So my old dad gets on his feet, walks down to the other place again, and came back. And the next night he gets a telegram to say that previously reported wounded in action, now missing in action, now reported wounded in action. For the second occasion. Dad gets on his feet and he walks another 10 miles down and 10 miles back to tell my wife again. It was hard on him. Hard on all of them.
What sort of letters did you get from them after they'd gotten the first telegraph that you were wounded? Telegram?
Just wondering how I was, hoping I was well. You know, nothing start the unit.
Were they told where you were wounded?
Where? The telegram's there on the table.
What does it say?
Well, wounded with a shrapnel wound, the left upper arm. Everything's comfortable in the first one. Second one, regret to inform you, your husband, William James Jones, the 235-019, and so-and-so is reported missing in action, North Korea. Further advice will be forwarded when available. And then the next one was regarding your husband. Previously reported missing action. Now reported returning in a wound in action, second occasion. A gunshot wound to the left, to the right thigh. That was it. Returning in, something like that. They are the worst ones. They were missing in action ones. You don't know. You never know. And I'd been with Mum during the war, and a couple of cousins, and one was on a plane in Germany, or over Germany, and he got missing in action. And I know how Mum felt then. And I guess I know how she felt when I was missing. I reckon that would be the worst message you could ever get out of a war, and even worse than being killed in action, at least you know. Wounded in action, missing in action.
Did you have soul while you were...
Very little, actually. I was there, went out about 1 or 2 days, and a lot of soil at that stage had been destroyed by bombardment and bombing and what have you. But I did visit one big church on the hill there now. What the nature of the church was, or the religion, I do not know. But we went inside and had a look around, and it was magnificent. There was pieces of church fittings and that, all inlaid with mother of pearl shell type. They were beautiful, it really was beautiful. And there was quite a lot of that in the building. But I don't know whether it was a very old church, but it was the most magnificent church I'd seen over that way at all. That was about the only decent building there. There were a lot of some shops, but nothing much. A lot of boarded up streets, that type of thing. But that one, the only end was 1 day out anyway. But I'll never forget that church. It's really good. And we had that was Christmas. That was the time, wasn't it? This is what? Oh, sorry. What time? Which time in your hospital are you talking about now? The first or
The
second?
first one with
First
the
one.
shrapnel wound.
Yeah, no, that didn't happen. That would happen later. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
Well, I went from the hospital in Seoul to Japan to curate the hospital. That time I didn't have any time in.
On the plane with your arm.
Yeah, that's right. And then I went over there and they operated on it. Eventually, then I wanted to come back, and they sent me out to a unit the British had there for convalescent diggers. They had to pass a test before they could come back to Korea.
Where was the test?
That was in Korea. So I had to get back within a month from leaving Korea. So I stayed out over a month, then I had to make up time after the unit came home. That was the understanding we all had. So I'd only been out about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and they sent me to this recovery unit. So I'm out there, and I said, "Do I want to leave?" They said, "You can't. You'll be here for 3 weeks." I said, "No, I'm not going to be here 3 weeks. So I've got to get back to the unit, otherwise I'm going to make up time." "Well, can you run a mile in such and such?" I didn't know how fast that. And he said, "Can you double time for a mile?" I said, "Yeah, no trouble." He said, "All right. Can you climb a rope 20 feet high?" I think so. So I get down there, and I get up, get about a foot to the top, and I couldn't go any further, so I come back down again. The sergeant, Tommy sergeant, "Get up there, yeah." So I start up again, and I get to that the same distance, then I come back down. And a couple of officers walked in, and he said, "Can't you do it, digger?" And I said, "No," I said, "I can do it, Robert, my arm's a bit crook." He said, "What's wrong with your arm?" I said, "I got wounded in there." "Ah, you silly bugger, he get up the side and about to make me climb up. They shouldn't have been up there with an arm wound." So he said, "Forget that." So I passed all the rest of them. That afternoon I went out to Hero, the Australian Reinforcement Unit. So I get out there and they said, "Righto, Corporal Young, you can do guard duty at night. Well, not if you don't want to do guard duty, I want to go back to Korea. As I've been out now 3 weeks, over 3 weeks, and if I don't get back, I'm going to make up, have to stay behind to make up time. All right. Where's your AB83, which is your record of service book, in which all your vaccinations and inoculations and all that are kept. I said, back in Korea. Well, he said, you've got no record of your inoculations. And I said, no, injections. Well, he said, you can't go travel internationally without a certificate to say you've had all of the vaccinations. There was typhus and smallpox and I don't know what else. That tetanus. No. There were about 5 veterans. He said, all right, well, you'll have to have them this afternoon. So I go down to the doctor. Where's your AB83? I told him. He said, I've got to have them all. He said, you can't have them all. Well, of course I can. So he gives you a vaccination in one arm, and a smallpox needle in one arm, and a tetanus needle, and a tat needle in this one, and I don't know. Anyway, they finish up, I walk out every arm, out like this. I got on the plane that night and went back to Korea. They wouldn't let me go without the vaccinations or a record of them.
And what was that convalescent camp like in
Korea?
Yeah.
It was just a barracks where you went and you lived in barracks there and you did their... actually, it was gymnastics and running, to get you fit for service again, to get you back into A1 condition. And I reckon I was strong enough to do it. The only thing I failed on was the bloody rope.
How was your arm?
It was all right. Muscles are mostly in the front of the arm, not the back. No, I mean, not the back of the arm. It was all right. It didn't break out or anything. It was all right. No great problem.
How long did you spend in that hospital in Korea?
2 weeks. 2 weeks. I was in there a few days, and then they decided to operate on the arm, because they had to cut the bad meat and that out. I'll be there for about another week after that, and then I left.
How was your health, I mean, aside from the arm, were you...
I was quite physically fit, very fit.
So what did you do to occupy your time?
In hospital, read books, I suppose. There's nothing else to do in hospital, is there? Couldn't go out.
Chase the nurses. What books did you read?
I read any book I could get a hands on.
What kind of books were available?
Oh, I don't know. Westerns, maybe. I like Western books. I like adventure books. As a matter of fact, I read all Bryce, what's his name, and Wilbur Smith. I like that type of book. I can read Westerns, penny dreadfuls, anything at all.
What are penny dreadfuls?
Mystery and romance, and not romance, mystery and detective stories. They used to cost a penny for a little thin book. You could read them in the night, throw them away. But no, they were. I can read any book. It's amazing what I read.
Would books be circulated amongst the patients?
Yes, hospital. All hospitals have virtually a library of books and magazines. They bring them around. The Red Cross nurses bring them around, or the Red Cross staff bring them around, or you can go to the room and get them. There's plenty of reading accommodation in all British hospitals anyway. I don't know what the others are like, I don't know. Nothing in the mashes, of course, there's nothing there. Then again, you're only there long enough to get better and go.
Okay, so you've just finished the hospital, so what happened to you after that?
Well, I went back, then I left Hero and we flew back to Japan within the month of going out so that I could keep my time up. We got back to Japan and I returned back to 4 Platoon, the B Company of my own unit. And I remained with them then. That was over July, August. So I stayed there then and I had a short leave in Japan, 14-day leave in Japan. And then we came back to the unit again. And after we came back then we were warned that we would be going on Operation Fauna, which was in actual fact a penetration raid into and behind the enemy lines in the hope of capturing a prisoner. that was a company patrol, a fighting patrol led by our company commander, 3 platoons and a total of about 90 men. So I was to go there as a bomber with a bomb made out of gelignite and firing pins and a grenade. And we were to blow up the Chinese bunkers and try and race in then without killing them. They wouldn't have killed them, but knocked them out and catch a prisoner. But it didn't work that way. I got wounded as we hit the enemy line inside the circle of their trenches. I got hit with a machine gun in the back of the leg, my right leg, and knocked down. I couldn't move my leg. And I was there for a little while, and a fellow came over and said to me, "You all right?" And I can't move my leg. And he subsequently went to get help. About the same time, a patrol of Chinese were running down this trench behind, and they circled around the trench, and another lot were coming, so I dived across the trench and went down the wrong side of the hill. We got down, going down that hill, I come under machine gun and fire again, and got down through that onto the paddy field at the bottom, and run into a mortar barrage, and I was caught in that for a while, and I was working out approximately what the fall of the shells were, and I thought, well, the next one's got to be mine, it's going to hit me. It was in line. So I sat up waiting for it to hit me, and as it hit the ground, I missed. I knew it was going to miss me, and I ducked. And luckily I ducked under it just enough to only catch a scratch across the shoulder with a shrapnel. Well, that was no good. I slipped over into a little gully which was nearby, which was about 6 or 8 feet deep. And I hid down under the bank there for a little while. And then I heard a patrol coming, so I got up and had a look over the bank, and there's a patrol of about 5 fellas going up that way, and one fellow walking straight towards me. So I get down, I was ready to shoot him if he comes over, because if I shoot him, I'm not getting out of there. If he sees me, I'm not getting out anyway, so it was 6 to 1, half a dozen the other. He came right across, and he walked across a log only about 10 feet away from me, and he walked across the log and up another hill. But as he stepped onto the log, I got my arm on him and I watched him all the way. If he looked around, he'd have been dead. And so would I later. But anyway, he didn't look around, so I let him go. And then I snuck down a bit further out away from the log and hid in a hole there all day. Eventually, I think you know the story I told you, I think, earlier. From there, I waited all day, and at dark, then I set off again to go home. And I'm going down the middle of the valley where there's paddy buttons all the way down, like little banks about 2 or 3 feet high, and to hold the water for the rice buddies. And going over them as I go down, and when I get across one, I see about 8 soldiers lined up on the next bank to me, facing away from me, with the Chinese troops pushing for anyone coming out, because they knew we had wounded or dead back behind, or they had prisoners, I don't know which. They knew we would try to get them. So anyway, instead of going on, I went right across to the edge and around the bottom of the ridge, about 200 yards down from them, and crawled back into the valley then and kept on going. I come to a creek. We were iced over, so I decided to cross it. Got about halfway across and the ice broke, and in I went. I had to break my way out, break the ice till it got firm enough to hold my body, then I slid across that onto the next bank and kept going. And about 3 in the morning, I suppose, I heard a patrol coming in, one of our own patrols. I attracted their attention, and they asked me who I was, and I told them, and they said, "What's the password?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "I knew what it was last night." He said, "He's your platoon commander." And our platoon commander had been killed, and we'd got another fellow, and I couldn't think of his name. I got a mental block. I said, "I don't know." I said, "My company commander is Major Mann, and my platoon sergeant, Sergeant McNulty." They get on the radio, him on the radio. He said, "Yeah, he's all right. You know where you are?" He said, "Down over there after the hill. If yes, he's coming to get me, I wouldn't be." They decided then I was an Australian. He said, "You got to get out the Minefield, we'll help you." In the middle of the Minefield. "How do I get out?" He said, "Walk back the way you walked in." I said, "Didn't walk in, I'm not walking out that way." He said, "Well, go to your right." So I go to my right. And the deputy said, "Where are you?" I said, "Over here." "You're on the wrong way." Go to the left. And they were looking at me, and I go to the right. It was their right. It was my right, was the other way. Anyway, I got out of that, and they helped me in. And between us, we got me back to the kitchen, the company kitchen. It was warm there, but my clothes was frozen on. We had heavy winter gear on the outside, and where it fallen into the creek, the jacket with a zip down the front. The zip was frozen in. They couldn't open it, and the trousers couldn't be undone. The zip down the front of them, and the boots were frozen on. The laces couldn't be undone. So they got a big knife and cut off my coat, my pants, and my shoes, those boots. And from under there I was dry underneath. And they gave me a bit of soup and called the casualty clearing station, and they came over and called the ambulance. And the 60 Field ambulance again took me back to, this time to American Mess. And after a lot of trying to explain when I'd been wounded, they said last night, and I said, "Yeah, last night," and that was the 12th, I didn't know it was the 11th, because I was talking about 2 nights before, and they were talking about, so they couldn't understand how I'd got wounded one night and never got home till the morning of the next day, and they were trying to work out that I was telling a lie that I was wounded this night, see? Well, anyway, eventually we got that sorted out, and they put me in hospital, operated on me straight away. And I was given blood, and they kept me there. That I was breakfast 8 in the morning, and then I went on to a British field hospital.
Just before we get to that, I'll ask you details along the way. What did it feel like, your wound?
Again, it's very similar to the one I explained a while ago. It's just like you're hit with a mattock handle, a hose handle, something right in the back of the leg. It numbs your leg from the hip down. And again, it's only a shock of a very hard hit, and there's no pain. About a minute later, the wound burns. The shell of the bullet in there was hot from the rifling of and they were hot for a little while. And eventually the heat goes away. It's not sore, not at that stage, and the numbness still in the leg. I don't know what it does to your leg, but it appears to numb the whole leg. And by the time I was coming home the next night, I was half crawling, half walking. You could walk a little bit, and then you couldn't keep the full weight on all night. But between crawling and walking, you could get home, So that was, but it's not. It's more like a hit with a bloody edge of a bloody wooden paling or something like that. It's the pain of the actual hit itself. The burning comes shortly afterwards, and the soreness doesn't come till the next day or a couple of days later when everything does get sore, I think it's a bit like a stab with a knife. It only stings, it only burns for a little while, and it's some time before the soreness really comes into it,
And can you remember what kind of thoughts go through your mind when you first get shot?
No, I don't. It's just another thing that happens. I don't know. There's nothing really that goes through your mind. You've been wounded, and when you're down there, there's not much chance of getting home without some help. And well, you got to make the best of what you can. That's it.
What were you thinking when you kind of were by yourself and you'd lost?
Well, I was thinking I was dead. It's only a matter of when I'm going to be dead. I'm going to be dead, and this is all it was. When that shell was coming, I knew it was going to hit me, and I sat up waiting for it. I didn't expect to get out of it. When the China had come across the log, I expected to be dead. I didn't. I wasn't going to look for it, but I certainly wasn't going to dodge it either. You couldn't dodge it. So the way things happen, that is more of a soldier's life than anything else. You do what you think is necessary to save yourself, And what do you do under circumstances? You're not going to let it kill you without having to go yourself. And to me, once they'd gone off, our own fellows had gone off that hill, I was dead. You know, that's the way I felt. And it didn't happen that way, but that's what I felt. So it didn't worry me greatly. It was only a matter of when.
What sustains you in that kind of, when you're thinking like
I
that?
don't know. Well, you do a lot of thinking of home and mum and dad and your wife, and by that time I think we had a baby, and I hadn't seen her and all that kind of thing. You're worried about what they're worried about, you know, more so than what you're worried about yourself. Yeah,
Did you think of them a lot?
yeah. During that period, yes. You do. I think you always do. I still think a lot of the three of them, mum, dad, and my wife. I think a lot of them all the time. You know, they never go away.
And describe for me what kind of thoughts went through your head when you sat low for a day.
Now, what am I going to do? How am I getting out of here? You know. Also, the American planes were over, looking for a chance of seeing us. I wasn't going to get out in the middle of the show where I was. And there were three of us missing, of course, at that stage. And every time they'd go over, the Chinese machine guns would open up on them from the hill. And I could see where they were, but I had no way of recording them. And when I came in, I was interviewed by intelligence officers and that, and they asked me if I'd seen planes, and I said yes, and had I seen guns firing at them, I said yes. I said, where were they? I said, along that ridge. And he said, show us on the map where they were. You can't. The maps are aerial maps, then camouflage positions, you can't even see them. From the ground you can see under the camouflage net. You can't from above them. So I didn't know any of it. I don't think they believe me to this day about seeing the machine guns. That's where I did what I could.
And what was your hiding spot like exactly?
The hiding spot there was, well, there was an open gully, a washout gully actually. It would be 10, 12 feet wide and 6 to 8 feet deep along the edge of a paddy bund. And where it came towards the end of the ridge, the depth of the gully lessened and became a gravelly water-washed stones bed on the creek. It was, the bank was only about 1 foot, 2 feet high, and it was a bit overgrown with weeds and stuff. There was a tree or a bush about 10 feet high, growing, completely covering the area underneath where there was a water hole which hadn't frozen over. And it was, I sat on rocks in there and spent the day there. Of course, I had my little book and I read a bit of that, and I broke up a couple of magazines that were empty, ammunition, bow and gun magazines. I broke them up so they couldn't be used. I made a tourniquet for my leg out of my scarf and one of the, I don't know what I needed the tourniquet, but my leg felt like it would bleed, so I put a tourniquet on. Maybe I didn't need it, I don't know.
What's a tourniquet again?
I was a scarf. We all had a green scarf we'd wear around our neck. We did that. I got an Owen magazine and twitched it tight with a twitcher and held it there.
What were you seeing of your wound? What could you?
I couldn't see it. I could feel it behind the leg there. And
What
I
did
had
it feel
3
like?
pair of trousers over. I was just a hole in my leg, that was all. It was just a hole. Well, and you were a bit lucky. I got caught in a burst of machine gun fire. One went through the inside of my left trouser leg, the inside of my right trouser leg, into the back of my leg there, and out and through the side of my trousers. There were 4 bullet holes in my trousers, one with me. I was very lucky at that one. But you could only, when you feel it, there's a bit of a hole there, and you get blood on your fingers, so that's why I decided I was bleeding, so I put a tourniquet on. I did get blood plasma when I got back to the hospital, so I must have lost a bit of blood, I don't know how much. I think they gave me the wrong blood. They paid me, marked my favourite, and allergic to penicillin ever since. And I'd had penicillin before, never had any allergy. And I got an allergy that night. After I got the blood, I still say to this day that the blood plasma gave me the allergy, it wasn't the penicillin. But they won't give me penicillin.
And
Anyway, we got back to...
well, just before you go there, a couple more questions.
Sorry, yeah.
When the Chinese patrol came by, can you remember the feelings within your body, what was going on in your body when you had them going over the log?
There was only one went across the log. The other 5 or 6 went back up towards the unit where I'd come down the side of the hill too, back in that direction. I didn't see where they went because I stayed under that bank for quite a while. But the fellow that came across, he obviously was from a different section because there was a section on top of that hill above where I was hiding that day. And he went to it and the others went back towards where we'd attacked the night before. So, but this fellow, when he came across, I thought that they must have known I was there, you know, and he was coming across to get me. And he didn't. He walked across the log, away he went, happy as Larry. So was I.
Did you eat anything or drink anything?
Well, I tried to eat the snow, wasn't very good. Nothing else to eat. No, I drank snow and drank a little water. That was it. Nothing.
And how could you tell that the patrol you brought your attention to was not Chinese when you were discovered?
Oh, when in the minefield, yeah. That when I could hear the Australians talking. I could hear them talking. They were home. They were home. They were inside our safety area when I heard them. And I was in the minefield, which is just in front of our safety area. But there was no problem there. They were home safe. And then you start, once you get there, you're safe. You can talk. You don't talk out in the middle of the paddock, of course. And, when you're home safe, you do.
And what was running through your head when you're told that you're in the middle of a minefield?
Well, that's another time when you think, well, if I'm going to die, I'm dying, you've got to get out. I'm not walking back down the bottom of the hill or getting back down the bottom of the hill, then going around and coming back. I couldn't have done that. I decided to take the chance and go to the nearest edge, which I did, and did not send off a mine. But whether I missed all the bloody spikes or not, I don't know. Or whether the mines were frozen into the ground and didn't operate, I don't know. But I do know this, that in February when I was back in the intelligence section, we got a report one morning and one of our troops got into that minefield and was killed in there. But maybe the mines had thawed out by then, I don't know. I still don't know. I won't ever know probably.
Do you remember how you moved through this minefield?
Yeah, mostly crawling. Couldn't walk. I could walk, but when I got back, when I got up to the unit, to the patrol, then I got an arm around 2 fellas and hopped in. So I could use my right leg, left leg. And I got in without any problems there. But until then I couldn't walk properly at all. You could take one step and then you'd go down, you know. So I think I was crawling most of the way, And I crawled out of that minefield, I know that.
And what was the feeling like as you got through it?
Once I reached the fence, it was a real feeling of relief. I don't know what the feeling was. It's just, I hope it's right, I hope it's right, I hope it's right. It's like playing a game of cards and betting on a card that you think is right and hope is right. And if it is right, if it's not, you lose. Life's a bit like a game of cards. You gamble it right.
Did you have any, beliefs or thoughts about fate or anything that got you through?
Faith? No. I don't think so. I read a little bit of the Bible that day. And I do, I suppose, think you got a certain amount of relief from it. I don't know. I wouldn't say, I found the Lord found me. It doesn't work. It didn't work for that for me anyway. It was just, I just felt better for it.
And what was the night like? How was the moon that?
No, there's starlight night. Starlight on snow is pretty light, not very dark. You can see quite a lot. Everything's black and white or grey, and fresh snow is very white. Anything on it is very dark. You don't trouble seeing a patrol 30 yards away from you, lying on a snowbank. No trouble at all.
How deep was the coverage of snow?
Only inches. 3 or 4 or 5, 6 inches. And places would have been a foot or so. Depends on just where it was. But overall it would only be. It'll be broken cover too, I think. It's if you've got long grass or no cover, it's in amongst the grass. If it's short grass, well, it's cover.
What about where you were hiding?
There was no snow, very little snow underwear. It was on the trees above me. Not underneath the bush, under the trees. Very little snow, no snow.
And what about during the day? Was it around?
Or? No snow that day. It was a clear day, clear. And in the morning at daylight, the British and Americans put a lot of smoke down, a lot of smoke bombs, and I don't know what smoke bombs are like. So they put all the smoke down on it. It was a bit foggy this morning. There's not enough fog to hide me, and if I get out there and they can see through the fog and they see me, I'm gone. So I wouldn't leave. And when I got back, they said, well, didn't you see the smoke we put down for you? I said, yes, I did. But it wasn't thick enough to hide me. And I said, I thought it was fog. And I thought if I got halfway home and the fog lifted, I'd be bloody left there, wouldn't I? So I didn't move, which is true. I've been in enough foggy country to know where fog will lift at 9 or 10 o'clock. So I wasn't going to be home by 9 or 10 o'clock.
Was it hard to make some of the decisions you made in those circumstances?
No. The decisions were automatic. I think it's just, you know a little bit about weather, a little bit about country, a little bit about what you can do, a little bit about your directions, you know your directions. And I knew my way home. Even though we only went one way at night, the opposite way, I knew where home was. I could see home from where I was, nearly. I knew where it was, but it was around the corner, a little bit home. And I knew how to get there. But I didn't get there that way.
How far away was it in your estimation?
About 2 miles. About 2 miles.
And how close was the Chinese line in your estimation?
I was about a quarter of a mile behind. The front one anyway. Had to go. See, the front line's a funny thing. It's not like a front line across a paddock like that. There's a unit here, there's a unit there, there's a unit there, and they are the front. In between them were gaps. So I had to go through a gap. We went in through a gap, and we came out through the same gap that we went in on. But I came out from a different place. So we came in, the gully that I came down, we went past it and up the next one beyond that when we went in. And we hit their trench coming forward onto the unit that we were attacking. And then I left there, I came straight down over the side, which meant I came in one gully before the one we went up. That's the way I got to go out. But when I get in the middle, then I've got to go back the way we came in again. No problem.
You mentioned you were fearful of death, obviously, but how fearful were you of just being taken prisoner?
I wasn't going to be taken prisoner. I was going to die. I had no chance of getting back. If I'd been taken prisoner, I wouldn't have gone back. I'd have been killed. We killed on that night. And if I'd been taken prisoner, we'd have been killed straight away. Oh, virtually. I think the other two would have been.
What stories had you heard of prisoners?
None. I've heard of prisoners, yeah, I've heard a lot of stories of prisoners. Some of them disappeared, some of them were killed. Some of them were ill-treated enough to be killed. Some of them died of hunger. Some of them died of their wounds. There's no medical treatment. So, I'm already wounded. I wasn't going to be taken prisoner anyway, so never going to fight in any case.
It's pretty. And how were your senses during this period? How were your senses?
Very alert, very alert. I knew everything was going on. I heard everything I heard. I looked at, you know. If you heard something rustling, well, you had to look to see what it was.
So tell me, what happened to you once you were back?
Well, I went to, they treated me in the kitchen and then in the field ambulance, MASH, and then to the British Advanced Hospital.
What was the field ambulance? Who took you in that?
The 60th Indian Field Ambulance. That was the only actual ambulance, other than the battalion ambulance, the company ambulances and that. The 60th Indian Field Ambulance were there for the express purpose of conveying prisoners wounded from front lines to hospitals. That was their sole purpose in being in Korea.
And how did you find them? What were they like?
They were good. They were just like ambulance bearers anyway. Same thing. They were sheiks, or what they call them, folks with the turbans. Whatever they are. Sikhs, yeah. Anyway, they were them, and they were good. They treated you well, they looked after you, and you got you back to the hospital, unloaded you there, then they went back to their unit. Everybody had a job to do. So your unit, you go back to your unit, and leave you at the hospital. And the ambulance from the hospital was a British ambulance. From there to the Advanced British Hospital, from the American MASH to the Advanced Hospital was a British ambulance.
What was the American MASH like?
It was very similar to the Norwegian MASH. It was a tent hospital comprising operating theatres, wards, kitchen, accommodation area. The same as the same as the American MASH on TV. Very, very similar to that. There's 3 or 4 operating beds, you know, in the theatre type of thing. Because Americans get a lot more casualties than we do. They're much thicker on the ground, and I don't know why, but they put 1,000 men where we put 100 men. And the shells are more likely to get contact with somebody. But they suffer a lot heavier casualties than British troops do. Yeah.
What do you think of that TV show, its representation?
I like it. It's not true, there's a lot of bloody stupid stuff in it. But overall, it is like the action was, you know. You wouldn't bloody hot lips and bloody that kind of thing, and that didn't work. It doesn't work. And I never heard anyone yell out for radar or anything like that. No, they just doctors and nurses and the same. They operate up under the same circumstances that MASH does in TV movies. Same thing. Very good.
Okay, well, take us through where you went from there.
We went to the Advanced Hospital. Now, I don't know what hospital it was. It was a British Field Hospital. And I went down there and they admitted me, and I developed a terrible rash. The orderly, the nursing orderly that was on, he had to come and bathe me in stuff, you know, for the rash. It was all over, completely over my body, except for the soles of my feet and the palms of my hands. My body was just one great round of rash. And he said, "You're allergic to something." And I said, "No, I know of." So about every hour he'd come around and bathe me in this calamine lotion type of stuff, you know. So anyway, that was all right. By morning it had eased off a bit. And then the British Brigadier or General came around on an inspection. He wanted to know what I was doing there. And I said, "I've been here because I was wounded." He said, "What are you doing in this ward?" I said, "I don't know, they put me here last night." So he called the orderly out and asked him what I'm doing in a VD ward. And I don't blame the orderly. The members in there were VD patients. And his office is straight opposite. They can see to keep an eye on the VD patients. And I'm in a position where he's got a baby in this calamine every hour. So he puts me the nearest bed to him so he doesn't have far to go. I don't blame him for that, but the bloody general did. I didn't like him at all. They put me out in the wounded ward then.
What was it like, the VD ward?
Just like any other ward, the blokes in bed. I didn't see any of their treatment, and they were just in there. Same as any other hospital, you know, you don't know what people are in hospital for. I wouldn't have known it was a VD ward.
Did you feel any atmosphere about it?
No. Didn't even know, did I? Until I was told, then I was moved. I never thought anything of it afterwards. Just nothing, just something had happened.
They weren't a little coy, or?
No, I don't go coy over things like that. But I don't know. I was there for a while, and then I went from there back to the Seoul Hospital, the British Hospital in Seoul, which was a school, and there they treated my arm again, and I mean, my leg, I'm sorry, they treated me, they got all the muck out of my leg and left it open again. And I was there for a week or so, and then another doctor operated on it, and he cleaned all the scar and the scab tissue and that out of it and stitched it up. And I was there over Christmas actually. And being a British hospital, the staff and the patients were all served their Christmas dinner by the British officers, which is a habit now in the British Army. Officers serve the ORs on Christmas Day lunch. So we all got served by the officers for Christmas Day lunch. And in the morning, the Christmas Day, the little choir, a choir of little kids come around singing Christmas carols in the wards. I love that one. Beautiful voice of the Korean children. And there was a particular song, very well known by the Australians, and I don't, but it was Ardy Dung. It's a Korean song. Ardy Dung, Ardy Dung, Ardy Dung. Anyway, every ward I think prevailed the kids to sing that song as well. It's a beautiful song. They did a real good job. And
How does it go again? How does it go?
Ardy Dung, Ardy Dung, Ardy oh. Over the Ardy Dung ranges I'll go. And I don't know. But anyway, that's an English version of it. But Ardy Dung is the name, and I don't know just what Ardy Dung means. But it's good. And we all used to sing it, because they had better voice in those days too.
What were the kids like?
Oh, they were like little school kids, I'd say 8, 9-year-old, 10-year-old maybe. And very pleasant to hear, beautiful voices to hear, you know, because we hadn't heard singing like that for a long, long time. And it was well worth the visit. Oh, anyway, that's all. We finished there, and after I got over that, the leg was getting pretty right. They sent us down to a rest and recuperation camp at Incheon. Now, Incheon's on the coast near Seoul, which where the Americans landed on a mental landing on Incheon when they were taking the second time, before they went back towards the north. They landed a sea landing in Incheon. And anyway, we went there, and there was a little recovery unit there. And that was funded, well, it was worked there, British women working there. And they had games like Monopoly and Ludo and chess and all that kind of thing. Some of the blokes there got sick and tired of playing Monopoly. So they decided a visit downtown would be in order. And no one, of course, had any money, so they decided to take some Monopoly money. So they filled up a pocket with Monopoly money and went down and found a brothel. And, after a while, they went to pay, and they paid with Monopoly money. No. Yeah, good. There's no American math, no good. American money, no good. They changed next week. Changed. This money next week. American money, no good at all. He got the message through, so the poor little girls, they decided, well, they'd better get there early, so they gave their American dollars to these fellas for their Monopoly money. Everything went sweet. Don't know how they ever spent the Monopoly money. True. I'd laugh. They come back. No one would believe, but it did happen.
How are you feeling about yourself at this stage?
I was well enough, you know. My leg was a bit bothersome, but it was still sore and stiff, but it was all right, no problem. It never, it was a couple of months, 2 or 3 months before it really got over that. But by the time I got home, I was all right. But when I got, after a week there, we went back to our unit. And I got back there and I got into trouble because my rifle was dirty and on parade.
We better take that up on the next tape. Oh right. Oh, you hit me accidentally.
Anyway, my rifle was dirty. So the lieutenant said, right, I had defaulters for you. They were in the rest area at this stage. So when you're in the rest areas, they can put you on defaulters, which meant you had to go down next to the side under the sergeant for a while in the afternoon. So I go down there and we presented arms a couple of times and he said, right turn, so we right turn, he said, double time, quick right, so I just stood there. So he said, what's wrong with you, young? I said, I'm got the double march. He said, why? I said, my leg's too sore. He said, all right, will you go and report to the lieutenant and tell him you refused to obey an order down there? I said, all right. I went up and I saw him and he said, what's wrong, young? I said, I just want to report that I have disobeyed a direction given by my NCO. This was the order. I said, so he said, why didn't you obey it? I said, because my leg's too sore. Oh, he said, all right, forget the defaulters. And that was the end of that. And then I remained there with the unit for about a week. And then I went back to Battalion headquarters, went on to the intelligence staff there for a little while, and then into the Battalion orderly room as a clerk.
Were you right to be back in your unit with the leg injury?
Oh, I suppose as right as you'd want to be. I could have done most things, but I wasn't going to double march. I wasn't going to do defaulters. I get a bit pig-headed sometimes. So anyway, I wasn't going to do defaulters. Because it wasn't my rifle, it was my rifle, but I didn't dirt it and I didn't leave it for a month without cleaning it, and I didn't have time to clean it properly that day. So as far as I was concerned, I did nothing wrong. I wasn't going to do defaulters. I cleaned the rifle, eventually.
But were you fit enough to go back to your unit?
Yeah, I could afford.
How was the leg? Could you...
It was sore, it was stiff in the thigh, but you could walk on it. I could walk on it. They wouldn't allow me back if I couldn't walk on it.
Was there ever any talk when you were in Japan amongst the soldiers about the war, the Second World War?
No, very little. We didn't meet, did meet some ex-servicemen there, but not many. But there was very little talk. A lot of them avoided us. A lot of the men, not the women, or not the younger ones, the soldiers' age, you know, they say 30 years of age and that, they avoided us when they could.
How do you mean they avoided you?
Well, they wouldn't talk to you, they wouldn't say good day to you, they wouldn't try to be friends or anything like that, you know, they just give you a cold shoulder type of thing, which is understandable under the circumstances.
Did you make any observations, I guess, in Japan which might have been as an effect of the war, aside from going to Hiroshima? Was there anything, I guess, were the men who were soldiers, did they wear specific clothes?
No, nothing. There's, we've met very few that were soldiers. We didn't meet them. We didn't go out of our way to look for them. And if they were soldiers, they'd probably tell us they were. You know, that type of thing. You don't... If you had a nation of people that have ruling your life by taking your country over, you're not going to like them anyway, really. Even though the war's over, you still don't want the fellas there. You want your country to yourself. And I can understand that. If the Japanese were out here, I certainly wouldn't want to be talking to or working supervising at that stage, you know. I wouldn't want it. And if the Islam's coming in now, I don't want them occupying the country. I certainly wouldn't want that. And neither did they want us there, occupying their country. That's right.
And how about when you were in Tokyo? Did you get out to any of the...
Yeah, we went to the Ginza, we went out. We went to quite a few places, the zoo up there, Tokyo Zoo is a terrific big zoo. The Ginza, we spent 2 or 3 days walking the Ginza, industrial area, not in the city area. We visited the palace, Japanese palace. The various memorials, we went to a museum, a hospital museum actually. They had every part of every type of body in bottles there, big jars and bottles, and goodness knows what. Every type of... We visited a park where a big monument there was built from the saucepans and frying pans and kitchen utensils of the Great Fire of Tokyo and the earthquake. They built all this temple out of the ruins of the kitchen, the houses that were destroyed in that earthquake and fire in the 1930s, I think it was. Yeah. And I found out that girls and boys can both use a urinal in a men's toilet. We went in there one day and the girl there was dressed up and the boy there with his buttons undone. They both peed into the urinal at the same time next to each other. Well, we know it had been done. That's in the same park. Life's little secrets do come out.
And the Japanese people generally, I suppose essentially the family that you spent time with, how did they dress? What sort of...
Mostly they were dressed in traditional Japanese kimonos, that type of thing. You had to take your shoes out the door, couldn't wear shoes inside. Their house, actually inside the house are all... The walls are paper, and paper and bamboo. They slide, most of the walls will slide anywhere. The all interior walls are like paper and bamboo. Tables are very squat tables, sit on a cushion on the floor, which I found very difficult because we had 2 bloody big legs wouldn't cross and so on and so on, but we got by. Chopsticks, I can't use chopsticks. So I got the spoon and I know it as baby. The baby, I know a spoon. So I know the baby.
And how would you sort of rate their standard of living?
They're very clean living in themselves. The houses are spotless. Even though they're paper and bamboo and that, they're very, the wood floors are polished. Mats on, tatami mats on all of them, and they're very, very clean. The standard of food must be good because they were all healthy enough. If they weren't healthy, I think they'd have some of that wine and the sake, and they'd be well, they'd get better or die. Really good stuff, that sake. Yeah. But no, they were nice people. And I enjoyed their company. They enjoyed ours, so there's no problem. We never run into the red caps again.
And when you went back to Korea after this leave, where did you go back to?
Back to 355.
What was going on at 355?
Well, that's where we did that last attack from. Well, that was before that last attack.
But what were you doing in the time before that last attack?
Well, we were on trenches or rest areas. We did both. Well, I think we might have been on the Hook at that stage. I think down near the Imjin River. The Hook was the Samichon Valley came down in front of the Hook, and between the American division on one side and the British division on this side, the creek was the boundary. And it's the Samichon Valley, which ran back up around between, it fronted on most of our division boundary. And we served there. Next door, we'd send a patrol down to the creek at night. we'd have 2 or 3 patrols, one at the creek, one about halfway back and one at the bottom of the hill, and then our own trenches up there. The Americans would do the same, they'd send a patrol down to the creek and across the valleys up to their side. And we sometimes stuck the Americans there, talking to them across the creek. There was no great problem there. It was, we were there one day and the American plane got shot down. It came over the hook and the Chinese hit it there and was heading back trying to get over the ridge next to us, which would have brought it down onto the Indian river banks and flat, but he didn't get over the top of the hill. He was killed, he died in the crash. But, that was the only American plane. I always saw others, but that was the only one that ever came down anywhere near us. And, we never had any action. Some of the others had action there, but we didn't. We were lucky.
How long did you spend there? How long did you spend at the Hook?
Oh, a month or so, 6 weeks. Most of the places you're only there for about a month or 6 weeks. You change over, you know.
And what are your comparisons between being at the Hook and at 355?
Very little difference. The nature of the ground was different. The 355 was, the rest of the areas were mainly low hills at that particular stage and river flats or rice flats and low hills. The Chongle's right opposite, maybe 150, 200 metres to most. And then you come up from there and you come to Matthew, Mark, Luke and John and 355 in that order, that order of height. And they were the front line virtually, with the Chinese owned Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, and we owned 355. And there was only about 200 yards between them, 300 yards at the most, between the two hills. So there was quite a bit of activity in that particular area. But the other end of 355 we had very little trouble, because from there to the Chinese lines was about a mile, mile and a half. So but where it's close you get more action and activity than you do where the lines are further apart. Other than patrolling you get no chance. Well, I can't think of much more else on that particular aspect of it.
Well, just either at the Hook or at 355, if there were times when I guess things were a bit quiet, what would you do? I don't mean really for entertainment, but to pass the time. Were there any common pastimes?
No, there's nothing. Nowhere to go. You couldn't go out of the line. You got to stay in your unit. You've got to stay on that little bit of a knoll there, and there's say 30 fellas there at the most. Half of them are going to be asleep. The other half are going to be doing something.
What?
Well, you got to sit up all night and patrol, or out on patrol all night. You go out, you get up and have your meal before dark, you go out at dark, you stay out all night. You come in at daylight, have your breakfast, then go to bed. Then you got to do something. So you got to sleep. The other fellas are probably, they've been up all night as well, but they might have to go and dig trenches or something, or excavate trenches or something during the day. Then that night they go out, and the other fellow. And so, you spend, well, at least one day out of two virtually on patrol, and the other one you've got to maintain your trenches and get a bit of sleep. You've still got to, even though your patrols are out there, you've still got to guard your own particular area as well. You're 2 hours on and 2 hours off at night guarding that. So you only need a half a night's sleep at any time, really.
Is it hard to sleep during the day?
No, not when you're tired enough. I've had, obviously, even since I died in the police, you do night work, you do a week of night shift starting 10 and finishing at 6 in the morning. You got to sleep the daytime, so you get used to it. But it's not, your hoochies are, you sleep in your hoochies, and they're underground, and you put a blanket across the front, that's pretty dark, so there's no great problem.
How about things to pass the time while you're in that area? If you weren't sleeping and you weren't on patrol?
Well, you could have a shave, you could write a letter, read letters. What else you could do? Write poems. There's nothing really to do. There's nothing.
How about cards?
You could play cards, yeah. If you got 2 or 3 blokes who could play cards, we did times. We'd have a game of cards, yeah. 500, chess, poker, not chess. 500 or euchre or poker,
What would you gamble on?
cigarettes. Millions of cigarettes. When you got American cigarettes, you got a packet of cigarettes a day. Half of most didn't smoke, so that gives you 2 packs of cigarettes a day. You got a tin of 50 British cigarettes a week. You had plenty of cigarettes.
And were you lucky in these poker games?
Well, I've been lucky all my life in poker games. I still do. I play poker at least once a month. Cards are not cigarettes anymore. Money's not cigarettes anymore.
Are there any, like, I guess, over the whole time in career, any moments of sort of humour or laughter that stand out more than any others?
Oh, they were all funny days. There's funny days every day, but there's nothing that I can think of. I had a couple, but I can't remember the names. We had a British wireless fella. He was a British enlistee. He came out here, real pale skin, you know, real white flesh. There's no bloody shadow of tan on him at all. And he wasn't used to hot weather. This was the middle of summer up there. And we went out, and he's the Lieutenant Batman, and he was also his radio operator. And he had big packs, big pack radios as big as a haversack on your back. They weighed about 50 pounds, and he had to carry that around with him. And the lieutenant was rather a brisk walker, and he had to keep up with him. And we were in a bloody, down on a creek bank there one day, and we all bloody cursed at the heat and the bloody rough going and that. And the lieutenant calls this fella, come up here with that radio. He starts off and he's stumbling, falling, getting the bloody aerials caught up in the bloody limbs and Christ knows what. And he's flaced, he's red as a turkey gobble of his face and that. And the lieutenant, well, aren't you coming? He's like, come on as fast as I can, sir. And he starts crying, he's like the others laughing. He couldn't get over, he was buggered, completely buggered. It was funny to us. Not what it was to anyone else, you know. It wasn't funny to him.
Were there any sort of common jokes or anything that you remember? Whether they were about the enemy or the situation?
No, not really. No. It's just day-to-day living, you know. There's nothing real. There's a lot of funny things, a lot of funny stories, I suppose, but you've got to be able to remember when so-and-so, oh yeah, and then you can remember. But I think I've remembered all I can for the day anyway, I think. And there are a few things. I think I told whoever it was on the radio, a couple of things. I said, I must get them down too. Well, I forget what they were down. But I did enjoy my life. And I'd love to have it all over again. I'd go back.
Why?
Well, I don't know, something to do. It was a change from what I was doing. I came home and I stayed with the battalion for another 18 months. And when they went to go back to Korea again, and my wife said, are you going? And I said, yeah. Well, she said, you go, I won't be here when you come back. All right, so I decided I'd get a transfer. So I told the CO I wasn't going back to Korea and I wanted to transfer. He said, where do you want to go? Oh, I said, well, I'm a clerk, so I'll go to service school. So I transferred to Army Service Corps and I worked a couple of headquarters Northern Command, RF5, up to RWSC, as a clerk around Brisbane. And then I got promoted to sergeant to apprentices school in Malcolm in Victoria. I went down there on the ordered staff of the Malcolm's apprentices school. And I remained there until June of 57, and my time came up for re-enlistment. I wrote and told the wife I was going to re-enlist in the army, because she wouldn't go to Melbourne. We had our own home, we bought our own home here, and she wouldn't go down to Melbourne to leave the home. So I said, well, you're going to get out of the army. If you stay in the army, you're going to lose me. I said, well, if I can get in the police force up there, I will get out of the army. I applied for the police force, it was virtually accepted. So at the end of my period of enlistment, I got out of the army, and the following week I went into the police force. I spent the next 26 years in the police force, and had a good life there.
Just to, we'll come to that. Just a couple more questions. You mentioned before, or am I not right, that you spent some time with the intelligence
Section of
section?
the headquarters company, the battalion headquarters, or
Can,
company headquarters, I should say.
can you tell me about that?
Yeah, there's nothing to tell really. The intelligence section is a section that prepares maps and gets all the messages from the surrounding troops as to the situation, or situation reports they call them, sit reps, of all the various troops each side of you, and they all come in. Every company gets a copy of these. So you work out where the enemy are in strength, where there's been any action, where there's any weaknesses in the defence system, and things like that. You also get your intelligence reports from your own companies to be related to the other companies and so on. And this is all done as maps kept of the whole area. You get all reports from the brigade, the battalion, division, brigade and division reports in, and you keep maps and keep a whole system of this in the area. But that's what I was doing for a while. And then at that stage, the orderly room lost a corporal. I lost as a clerk, so I went over to the orderly room then as a clerk. And I remained as a clerk in the battalion orderly room then until I left the battalion 2 years later. So thereabout. I didn't want to go back to the front line. I'd had enough of that. By then, now I could have gone back to career as an orderly room, British young orderly room sergeant, warrant officer, but it wasn't to be. I got talked out of it by my wife, but then again, my wife was a part of my life anyway, so she was entitled to a bit of comfort.
And tell me about coming home.
Well, we came home on the New Australia, which was an experience you had to have to really ever realise what comfort was. Because we lived over there at the end of the winter, and we were dirty, we were unwashed, we were unclean, and they put us on the New Australia. It was a migrant ship. And it was fully staffed, and every bed had linen sheets, and every plate, cup and saucer, and knife and fork and spoon were clean, the tablecloths were cloth, and it was just magic. Everything was so clean. And there was plenty of hot water, plenty of showers and everything else. So we had a ball for about 3 days getting clean. Anyway, it was a terrific trip home. Real comfort all the way.
What were you thinking about on the way home?
How soon are we going to get home, see our families again, mainly. I was going to see my daughter, which I did. She met me at my wife met me at the boat when we came into Sydney. Yeah, terrific.
Can you tell me about that?
There's nothing to tell. It was, just a reunion, I suppose, eh?
Well, I guess...
I can't tell you. It's just one of those things that are so good.
But what's it like seeing your daughter for the first time?
Terrific, terrific. Yeah, it's just something that happens. You can't talk about it. I'd never seen her before. That was on my wife's birthday, strangely enough, the 9th of September, 9th of April, 1953. It was her birthday.
9th of...
April 1953, yeah.
And what was it like, I guess, settling in to a life with a wife and a child?
We never went back to the farm. I never went back to a farm. We came home, I was in the army. We were transferred to Brisbane. Came up here, couldn't get a house to rent. We had a baby. You can't, no one would rent your house to get a baby. So I had about, well, between the wife and I, we had £240. And I had an uncle with an old digger, I met his uncle, and he had applied for war service homes. So I did, and you get 1/10 deposit, you could buy a house. The house was worth £2,400. £2,226. No, it cost me £2,226 at 426 pound it cost me deposit for this house. Oh, I forget. 2000. We had £240. That's right. It cost us £226 for the deposit on the house. And the 14 or 15 pound that was over, we went and paid a deposit on a dining suite, a bedroom suite, a cot, and a fridge. From Tritton, who then was a big store in Brisbane. And we got that on the Never Never, and that was our house, and that was our home. And we got it all for £240. That was it. And then my wife would refuse to go. Wouldn't leave it anymore. That was all right. So we kept that until about 1960 when I sold it.
Upon returning, did you have any problems settling back into a normal life?
No. Well, we, normal life to me was army, and I was still in the army. After I'd been in the army 2 years by then, and that was my normal life. Only a continuation of army service. No problem.
What about being away from, a war?
No, I didn't worry anything. I don't think it worries anybody being away from the war. It's going to the war that might worry you. But no, you get over it. There's no hangover. I suppose there's certain things to do, like one night in particular, after we'd bought the house, big thunderstorm came up through the night. And I don't know, I must have been sleepy and dreamy or something. And next thing I'm out on the floor trying to get under the bed. And what's wrong with you? I thought I heard a shell going off. I dived for cover anyway. But that did happen. But sometimes, I know it happened to others too, but one of those things. You do get a little bit of nervousness with sudden noises like that, but eventually it wears off, it's worn off. Some things still do hurt, others don't. And I've never been one to worry too much about results of what's happened in my life.
What kind of things do hurt?
Things like unnecessary deaths, good mates going, you can't help that type of thing, yeah. I've had quite a few funerals of mates since those days. And, there's nothing you can do about them, they're dead. You lose your friends, you lose a lot of friends through life, I suppose, everyone does. But these mates in particular. You lived a very, very important part of your life with them, and they are mates. Whatever the conditions or circumstances are that change, they're still mates, and you'll do what you can. That's why you'll find in life that there's a great camaraderie between members of RSLs, for argument's sake, where there are blokes that have known what the other fellows have been through. They all know, and Association of Soldiers is one of the strongest associations and affiliations you could get anywhere in the world, I believe. I don't think there's any stronger affiliation anywhere. And a loss in them is a loss to you, a loss to everybody.
In that way, do you feel part of the Anzac tradition?
I don't know about part of the Anzac tradition. The Anzac tradition, I am proud of the fact that I have been a returned serviceman. Anzac itself was another war. France was another war. The islands were another war. And they're all wars now. And I don't think that Anzac is Australian New Zealand. It's not only Australian New Zealand. It's all soldiers of all countries feel that same affiliation with each other. It's the same with, if we got with a Turkish regiment or a French regiment, and you'd be the same. They're all soldiers. They've been there, and they know what it's like. If you've been there, you know what it's like, and you can't tell people what it's like. I can talk all day, and I can't tell you what it's like. You're not going to know what it's like now. You know some of what I've been through. You cannot know what it's like. Nobody can. I wish everybody could. There'd be much more understanding in the world today if they could.
Well, what's the best way that they can try to?
Have another war. That's being too slick. No, I don't know how you can, to be perfectly honest. The troops that go away, all those young fellas that went to Borneo, not to Timor and Somalia, they got a rough idea what it's about. And they one day will be the returned servicemen of Australia. There'll be no old fellas left. And I got a photograph over there of the battalion that went away. And in that, the company, the platoon that went away, they did that, there's 30 odd, and they were all young fellas. At the day, I suppose, there's 20 of them, 15 of them alive. Where are all the young men gone? I'm not a young man anymore. I can look at a photo of any of the old soldiers now when they were young. Where are the young men? There ain't no young men. Not those fellas. Some are dead, some are here, but they're not young men.
So what did you learn from your wartime service?
What did I learn? I know what it's like to be in a fight. I know what it's like to be wounded. I know what it's like to do those things. There's nothing you learn. I don't think there's anything you learn. Life is a learning thing all the time. And whatever you do, you learn from, I suppose. But there's nothing that I can specifically say I learned. I know what extreme friendship is, probably, more so than just friends. You've got extreme friendships. That is a big thing. And I think comradeship and mateship is one of the strongest things we all learn in the Army, or no, in your Air Force for that matter. You learn a life, you learn to live, and you learn the value of life. I could have been dead 52 years ago, and then had none of it. Some of my friends were, they don't know what life's about. They were boys, never lived a life. Yeah, that's about that.
So what changes in yourself occurred over your time during the war time?
Oh, I don't think many. Learned to be a little bit more self-reliant. I learned to trust my own feelings about things. I know I can live, I know I can get by, and I know I can do it successfully. Wherever I go, I can make a success of it. There's no problem. That's about the only thing I have learned. I started off virtually chasing jobs, chasing seasons when I was a boy, and I chased jobs all my life. I got jobs I liked, I stayed with them. I got a woman I liked, I stayed with her. Got a family I like, I've still got them.
So how did your service time and your wartime service feed into your future job as a policeman at all?
Yes, I think it did. A lot of policemen go to the job and they become hot-headed, they become fiery-headed, they want to rattle around and they want to do everything. Where you've had experience in life, you've got a life experience behind you and you can tolerate a little bit of nonsense. Where some of them, if you said shit, you'd locked up for swearing. Others, and the young policemen are a menace to the police force, in actual fact. Particularly young fellows that want to bloody impress with their ability and their whatever. They are a menace. But they learn, and a couple of years, a few years later, they're quite good policemen. But if you get return servicemen coming into the police, which I did, and a few others went in there at about the same time as what I did. They were all had service experience, and they were sensible police to start with. They didn't have to have that rashness knocked out of them. They were already knocked out. There's a few fellows, well, 2 or 3 of them I knew, Navy fellows that I still play bowls with occasionally. A couple of Army fellows I got out and played football with. Oh, well, we played football with them before. One fellow was Kenny Potts, he was in Korea. And we played football together after we came back. We both got out to the police and we joined out of the Army, we joined the police within about 3 months of each other. We both retired, he died since, but we were mates always, you know, yes. We've both done the same things, been in the same place and played football together as a team. After I came home, while I was in the Army, after we came home and before I went to Balcombe, I played Army for Queensland Services, Combined Services. And we played in the reserve grade rugby union competition in Brisbane. We won it. I went to New South Wales with the Queensland Services team and we beat the teams in New South Wales and Victoria in Sydney. And I played football until 1956, the year before I went out of the Army. I gave it away. But of course by that time I was only 28 years of age. Too old, at 28 for me anyway.
Any problems from the leg?
No, not really. I went up there, I've got a problem with my legs, yeah, I had some vein blockage, you see. I went up just recently and got x-rays of my legs. And doctor looked at me and he said, when did you ever get a bullet in there? And that bullet in the back of that leg is still in there. It shows up in the x-ray. I said, that was only 51 years ago. He said, I thought they took it out. He said, no, it's still in there. I thought they'd taken the bullet out when they operated the leg. All they did was take the rubbish out, like the cloth and everything else that went in there. The bullet's still in there. I never knew that. I've been carting it around now for 52 years, extra weight. No, I didn't even know it was there, so that's how much trouble it's been. None at all.
You ever going to have it removed? Or?
No. I might as well look after it for the rest of my life. I've looked after it now for 50 odd years. I've had it longer than anyone else have had it. Yeah.
So what had attracted you to the police force initially?
Oh, it was a permanent job. At that stage I've got 2 kids and a wife and a house to pay off. And there was no more seasonal work for me. I couldn't do that and keep the house and the wife. So I had to have a job, a permanent job, where I wasn't likely to get sacked from or anything. And it fulfilled those requirements, and I didn't mind the police idea, you know. So I joined the police.
And, sorry, just before that, where did you hear about the end of the war?
The end of the war I heard of on when I was in which war?
The Korean War.
Oh, the Korean War. No, I was in the Army when I heard about that. I was 54. That's where, 54. I was in Brisbane. It was still in the, it was just after the battalion went back. about the time the battalion went back to Korea was the war finished at that time, and I was still stationed either in Brisbane at, I think I was at the headquarters Northern Command Troops, RWC, at that stage. Yeah. And I was out of the army. I was out of the battalion went back, and they didn't serve in action again after they went back. So that would have been after July of 1954. I might have still even been with the battalion when the war finished.
What were your thoughts when you heard the news?
Oh, no particular thoughts. Just well, we knew it was coming. See, they'd been Panmunjom was the Panmunjom peace talks were going on for about 3 years before the peace was actually settled. Several times they thought they were going to have it, and several times they thought they were not going to have it. But the peace talks went on for a period of 3 years, I think, at Panmunjom, and that's where it was eventually. Everyone knew it was going to finish at some stage or other, and it just finished. There was no surprise to anybody that the war finished.
And did you have any celebrations or parades?
No, not then. We've had parades since, like even this year. It's 50 years this year since the war finished. So we had a bigger parade this year than we've ever had.
You ever felt there hasn't been enough recognition of Korea?
There was never enough recognition of Korea, that is correct. There was never enough recognition for Vietnam either until the government saw its way. And they have had their recognition completely filled. The Korean veterans never... only 2 years ago, they gave us an Australian medal for going to Korea. Before that, we had a British medal and a United Nations medal. No medal for Australia either for going there. 2 years ago, they gave us one. And it's supposed to be the first medal we got, and they hadn't even got the right regimental number on it. It's because when I got out of the army, I enlisted in the CMF for 2 years, and they put my CMF number on that bloody medal. I never fought under that number, but it was my number. But they could have at least given me my right bloody number.
How did it make you feel, the kind of lack of recognition?
You feel a little bit sour with the government, but not enough to worry about, I don't think. There's certain things that the government could have and should have done, but then again, we got treated, well, I suppose as good or better than a lot of the troops that came back from the Second World War, and certainly better than the troops from the First World War, and they got nothing, except a few soldier settlement blocks. And it took years and years and years for them to recognise pensions as such, except for TBI. And anyone who's been there, they've virtually, if they've seen action, I reckon they're entitled to a pension, because you can't live life as we do, and without thinking, you think of it every day of your life, you think what happened and what could have happened and what should or should not have happened. And I still feel responsible for the death of one particular fellow, and he was only trying to help me. The other deaths, you lose your age. They killed Nash, but this fellow I killed. He worries me. He worries me. I didn't kill him, but he died because of the... good luck. Nothing I can do for him.
What's your best memories of your time in Korea?
I don't know. There's no particular best memory. Well, that would probably be the worst memory, but there's no best memories. No best memories. Lots of things happen. Lots of things we laugh about every time we meet. They're not necessarily good things, they're not necessarily bad things, but they're things. And I don't think you could pick out anything and say, well, that was the best thing that happened up there. Neither can you say mostly that that's the worst thing that happened up there, you don't know. Yeah, I don't think there's any way you can answer that question.
Do you have any other kind of effects, lasting effects from your Korean time?
Not really.
Any stress or?
Oh, I've got stress. They tell me I have. I've got a certain stress ratio, I suppose. I've got emphysema with smoking. I was alcoholic. A few things like that. I got over most. I drink about half a bottle of scotch a day, and I'm not an alcoholic. I don't smoke.
Is any of this related to your wartime experiences?
I think so, yes. I get a pension, disability pension for stress, for smoking condition, for alcoholism.
Is the alcoholism related to your experiences?
Yes, I'm afraid so. I didn't drink much until after I came home. And I think it's to try and get rid of some memories. So I started drinking. That was while I was in the army too. I became an alcoholic in the army. Since the army, I've virtually got over to a large extent, but I still have become drunk a few times, particularly Anzac days.
Did it help you cope at all? Drinking?
Did it help me, Case?
No, did it help you cope with some of these memories?
Oh, well, it doesn't help you cope, but it makes you forget, which is, I suppose, something similar. You don't drink, you drink to forget, not to bloody help anything else. You try, if you numb yourself enough, you're going to go to sleep. You don't worry then too much. You wake up next morning, cook, but you never do it again. Next night you do it again.
What would you think about on Anzac Day?
The same thing, just spend a few tears. Old mates, that sort of thing. And then, of course, the odd time you get a lot of laughs. But you do. And the last post of that is a very serious matter, very serious thought. I don't know what you can say about it, but it is, I can't stand funerals, but I can't stand, I love Anzac Day, but it hurts, it hurts. I wouldn't miss Anzac Day if I get out of it. But still, I think it's only paying a debt.
And how did the people around you support you through this? How did they?
I think they all feel the same. Not to show it so much of them.
I mean, your family, your wife.
Oh, they stood by me always, yeah. Yeah, they've looked after me a few times. My wife was a wonderful woman. I don't know how she put up with me myself. I would have been allowed to be here at times, I think. Yeah, anyway, that's all right. That's all over now.
Well, we're getting pretty close to the end, so I might just ask you just a final question related to your wartime service and your life. Is there any final thoughts or final words that you'd like to say, or anything that you feel isn't covered?
I think we've covered virtually most of the things, and I think I've expressed most of the things I feel in life. Life it's a job. You've got to live life. You've got to be prepared to work. You've got to be prepared to assist where you can. And I've lived life that way whenever I can. I've done my share of public duties outside of work. I've been a member of the bowling club down here. I've been president a couple of times, one thing and another. Quite happy with that. You've got to take part in public life wherever you can. and you've got to be interested in flowers. I love gardening. But no, actually, seriously, I wouldn't change a day of my life. I don't think, even with all the rough bits and the smooth bits, I'm quite happy to live my life. Quite happy the way I've lived it. And I wish that everybody could live their lives to get the enjoyment out of it that I've had out of mine. In both army and police service, and in knockabout before that. That's it.
Thank you. Excellent.